A thin wisp of blue smoke trailed from the exhaust pipe as the white Saturn pulled into the driveway of the two-bedroom wooden house. The tires crackled over small chunks of concrete that had broken off the paved surface as the car slowly made its way to the detached garage. The driver parked the car in front, leaving the old vehicle exposed to the elements. For most of its 15 years, it had remained outside. Wade exited the car, pausing to lean heavily against the door. He looked just as worn out as the vehicle. Or maybe it was the other way around. Even the badge indicating his job as a mall security guard appeared lackluster. It had been a long day, patrolling the mall to protect stores from the occasional shoplifter and customers from frequent skateboarders. Everything around him seemed tired. The houses, built in the 1940s, showed varying levels of disrepair. They had been constructed quickly and cheaply to accommodate families working in factories during the war, and they hadn't aged well. The factories were long gone, but the houses remained, all occupied, though a few would need significant repairs to be marketable. As he walked up the driveway, he noticed the 3-foot-wide strip of grass separating his driveway from the neighbors. The grass was beginning to turn brown, signaling the end of fall and the approach of colder weather. There were enough green patches remaining that he'd need to mow one last time before winter. Just as he was about to ascend the 3 steps to the side door of his house, his neighbor called out, Wade? What's up, Jess? He replied, turning to face the attractive young woman. She wore a little black dress that seemed out of place in the neighborhood, low-cut enough to reveal a hint of her figure. Her long hair flowed freely, and her makeup was just enough to enhance her natural beauty. My mom is sick and can't watch Leo tonight, and I have a date. I can't. I mean, I'd hate to miss it, Jess said, panic creeping into her voice at her slip. I'd be happy to watch him for you, Jess, Wade offered, curious about what she had nearly revealed. Thanks. You're a lifesaver, she replied, relief evident on her face. Do you need me to feed him? He asked. No, we ate earlier. I mean, I already fed him, she stammered, flustered. Okay, Wade said, nodding. I'd better get Leo ready, Jess said, turning back toward her house. Just bring him over when you're ready to go, Wade suggested. I'll be over in 10 minutes. I don't want to be late, Jess said, hurrying inside. Wade watched her go, feeling a twinge of sadness that a woman her age was a widow. He thought the country should offer better support for those who lost loved ones in service, but he knew his opinion wouldn't change anything. With a sigh, he went inside to prepare dinner. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on his door. He opened it to find Jess standing there, holding Leo's hand. He nodded at her before looking down at the 6-year-old, who was clutching a coloring book and a box of crayons. How's it going, Leo? Wade asked with a smile. Same old, Leo replied. Wade chuckled at the greeting. Have you been hanging out with your granddad? Yep, Leo said with a broad grin. I've got cartoons on the television. You know where to find them, Wade said, gesturing toward the living room. Leo dashed inside, excited about the rare opportunity to watch cartoons. I really appreciate you watching him, Jess said, her gratitude evident. No problem. It'll give me some company for a change, Wade replied. Wade lived a fairly solitary life outside of work. Evenings were spent watching history programs or reading, while Sundays revolved around chores. Occasionally, he found ways to help others, but those chances were less frequent than one might think. His isolated lifestyle wasn't by choice. With work on Saturdays, he had limited opportunities to socialize on Friday nights. Even if he did manage to break free, he hadn't met any women interested in dating him. He didn't consider himself attractive. Jess frowned at this realization. I really appreciate you doing this for me. I won't be out too late. Don't worry about it. Just have fun on your date, Wade encouraged. Yeah, right, Jess replied, looking less than enthusiastic about her evening plans. Wade watched as she walked over to her 7-year-old, Hugo. He sensed she wasn't particularly excited about her date. If it were him, he'd be thrilled. But dating was for younger, more attractive people, he thought as he closed the door, reflecting on the difference between them. Hey, Leo, I'm making macaroni and cheese. Want some? He called out. Nah, I had that for dinner, Leo shouted back. There's plenty for both of us, Wade called. He moved to the stove and peered at the boiling noodles, realizing he had rushed to prepare something Leo would enjoy. Packaged macaroni was cheap, filling, and quick to make. It made sense Jess had served something similar before heading out on her date. He opened a package of sliced ham and dropped the meat into a frying pan, sighing as he turned up the heat. It was going to be another simple meal, macaroni and cheese, fried ham, and a chilled single-serving container of canned pears. Uncle Wade? Leo appeared in the kitchen during a commercial break. What's up, Leo? Wade replied. Are you making the kids kind of macaroni and cheese? Leo asked, searching for the box. You bet. I've got the one with the cartoon dog on it, Wade said, holding up the box for Leo to see. He always kept a box with a kid-friendly theme for the times he babysat Leo. He didn't care about the branding. It all tasted the same to him regardless of the shape. Leo grinned at the sight of the box. He was always pleasantly surprised that Uncle Wade kept treats specifically for him, which made him feel special. I'll take some. Mama made the adult kind. It was the white box with black writing on it. She said that it was on sale, Leo said. Well, you can have some of the kids' stuff, Wade said. Feeling a little guilty for serving Leo macaroni and cheese, he wondered how many boxes of the stuff the poor kid ate that week. It seemed to him that Leo ate cold cereal every morning, bologna sandwiches every lunch, and either hot dogs, spaghetti, tuna fish casserole, or eggs with corned beef hash for dinner. That reminded him that he might want to invite them over for hamburgers, corn on the cob, and potato salad either Saturday or Sunday night. Great, Leo said. Wade heard the commercial end and the cartoon start. The boy ran back into the living room to watch some more cartoons. Leo wasn't going to miss a single minute of cartoons. One of the local broadcast stations showed cartoons in the late afternoon, and all of the local stations had them on Saturday mornings. Leo wasn't going to miss 1 minute of 24-hour cable cartoon channel. Wade knew that Jess was overwhelmed with bills. Her late husband had a reasonably good job until he joined the service. That had hurt his income, but there had been other benefits that offset the loss. They had managed to get by while he was in active service. His death had devastated the family's budget. It had taken her far longer to collect benefits than she had thought it would. When the insurance money finally arrived, she spent it to cover the costs for the funeral and to pay off a significant fraction of the mortgage on the house. She had refinanced the house to make the payments easier to afford. A few repairs to the house, such as a new roof and a paint job, had eaten what little money had been left over from the insurance money. Her financial strategy had worked initially, but prices had gone up, tips had gone down, and her car required frequent repairs. Now she was left with a small widow pension and a waitressing job at the local diner that just didn't cover the bills. She was doing okay until recently. The kindergarten program had increased the price of their after-school program. The heating oil company came out to service her heater and had declared it was a hopeless cause. The burner was over 30 years old and had to be replaced. Not satisfied with VA healthcare, she tried to carry a health insurance policy to cover her and her son. When Wade had found Jess crying about her financial woes, he had told her that she could get free TV by getting a special antenna and converter for her television. When he brought over used antenna and converter, she had immediately canceled cable television. Since then, Leo couldn't wait to watch cartoons on Wade's television. Dinner didn't take too long to cook. He prepared 2 plates. For Leo, he put a little ham, cut up into small pieces, on a small plate along with a small serving of macaroni and cheese. He added 2 slices of canned pears on the plate, thinking a growing boy could always use extra fruits in his diet. He loaded his plate with everything left over. He carried the plates out to the living room. Leo was seated on the floor next to the coffee table. His coloring book was open to a picture of a sailboat. He was coloring the sail while watching the cartoon. His ability to stay within the lines was inversely proportional to the attention he was giving the cartoon. So far, the cartoon was winning. Wade put Leo's plate down on the table along with a spoon. He knew Leo had a problem using a fork when it came to small items like peas, macaroni, and corn. There would come a time when Leo would be insulted by the presence of the spoon, but that was a while in the future. Until then, it was just easier to cut up the food into bite-sized chunks and give him a spoon. Wade said, "Eat up." "Wow," Leo said wide-eyed. He picked up a small chunk of ham using his fingers. He didn't get meat like this very often. The piece of ham was quickly followed by a slice of pear. He felt that eating utensils were only required when the food was too messy. It was a view not shared by his mother. "I thought you'd like that," Wade said. "I love it," Leo said. Although there was a lot more food on his plate, Wade finished his meal before Leo. It appeared that not only was Leo's ability to color inversely proportional to the attention he gave the television, so was his ability to eat. The food disappeared off the plate almost by magic when a commercial came on the television. Once he had finished eating, Leo asked, "Uncle Wade?" "What?" Leo asked. "Why does Mama cry after her dates?" "Maybe she misses your daddy," Wade answered. "I miss him too, but I don't cry," Leo said. "Why not?" Wade asked. "Big boys don't cry," Leo answered, trying to sound tough. "Sure they do. Cowboys cry in their beer," Wade said. He figured that Leo missed his father and didn't know how to deal with his emotions. Getting in touch with his feelings of loss would probably do him some good. Cowboys crying in their beer would give expressing his sadness about losing his father legitimacy. Wade wasn't of the mindset that men ignored their feelings. Of course, he wasn't of the mindset that men went around wearing their emotions on their shirt sleeve. Leo asked, "Really? That's what the songs say," Wade answered. "I bet young cowboys cry in their root beer." "Maybe I should be a cowboy," Leo said. It was both a question and a statement. "Maybe I should buy you some root beer," Wade said. "I'd like that," Leo said. "Remember, you've got to drink it real slow so that you finish crying before you finish your root beer. You don't really cry into the glass. You just take little sips while crying." "I think that's part of the rules," Wade said. "If you follow the rules, no one can call you names." "I'll remember that, Uncle Wade," Leo said. The next cartoon started and Leo turned to watch it. Wade sat back and picked up the book he was reading. He figured he'd get through a page or two before the next commercial. Leo tended to watch the cartoons and then chat with him during the commercials. The only problem with his plan was that his mind wasn't really on the book. He kept wondering about the things Jess had said about her date. She had been a widow for more than 4 years now. Wade felt she should be getting on with her life. She was pretty enough to be able to attract about any man she might want. A nice, stable boyfriend would be good for her. Leo needed a good role model. The evening progressed with Leo watching cartoons and Wade reading a book on the Civil War. This was his 4th book on the subject over the last month. It wasn't that he was particularly passionate about the Civil War, but he found it somewhat interesting. The idea of brother fighting brother sickened him, and he wondered how emotions could have run so high. He wasn't a political type of person, but he felt at times that the country was on the verge of another civil war. This one wouldn't be along state lines, although state rights was one of the issues that today's conflict had in common with the Civil War. There were 2 very polarized political philosophies at play, and he didn't like the direction the conflict was headed. Television coverage of current events was extremely polarized. It had stopped being a presentation of the facts and became incessant espousing of opinion. It was so bad he couldn't watch the news anymore. Instead, he watched history programs and read books. He read a lot of books. "Uncle Wade?" "What, Leo? If you had to be a superhero, which one would you like to be?" Leo asked. "The Pillsbury Doughboy," Wade answered. "He's not a superhero," Leo protested. Wade replied, "I know, but I already look like him." Leo laughed and then said, "You do. So which superhero would you like to be?" Wade asked. "Captain America," Leo answered. Wade said, "That's a real good choice." "My daddy was a lieutenant in the army," Leo said. Wade said, "I know. He was a good man and would have become a captain before long." "Why did they kill him?" Leo asked. His grandfather often spoke about those responsible for the conflict. He blamed the leaders in Washington for sending his son into harm's way. Leo didn't fully understand the situation, but he felt a sense of resentment. He was confused about why his father followed orders from people he saw as misguided. Wade replied, "I don't know. There are just some bad people in this world. I wish we could stop them," Leo said. "No, you don't. Superheroes don't kill people. They catch them and take them to jail," Wade said. "I know," Leo said depressed, "but they killed my daddy. I was proud to know your father. He was a good man. He loved you and your mother a whole lot," Wade said. "So why did he join the army and get killed?" Leo asked. "He loved you so much that he wanted to make a better world for you. He thought if he was able to get rid of some of the bad men that the world would be a better place," Wade said. "Grandpa says that we should just nuke the Iraq," Leo said. "I'm sure he does," Wade said. "I don't get it. Why put Iraq in a microwave?" Leo asked. "He means to bomb it with an atomic bomb," Wade said. "That makes sense," Leo said. He noticed that the commercial was over and turned to watch the television. It was a new set of cartoons. This particular show was about kids rather than superheroes. Wade hoped that the new cartoon would end the questions about Leo's father. It always made him uneasy to talk to Leo about his father. He liked and respected Jimmy. The man had been a good neighbor, and it was shame that a man like him had died so young. Taking him by surprise, there was a knock on the side door. He glanced at the clock and realized Jess had only been gone for 2 hours. Since a date usually lasted longer than that, he was pretty sure that his visitor wasn't Jess. He wondered who would be knocking on his side door, since everyone else he knew used the front door. Opening the door, he was surprised to find Jess standing there. Her eyes were red, and she had lost the makeup around them. It looked like she had been crying. "Oh, you're back. I guess the date didn't go well," Wade said. "It went well enough," Jess replied. "You're back early," Wade said, puzzled by her reply. Jess said, "I'll get Leo out of your hair. He's been great. He's busy watching cartoons. Would you like some coffee?" Wade asked. "No. It's been a long night," Jess answered. Gesturing inside the house, Wade said, "Okay, come on in and we'll collect Leo." "Thanks," Jess said. While walking through the kitchen, Wade said, I was thinking of cooking some burgers outside tomorrow night. Would you and Leo like to join me? That would nice, Jess said. I'll make some corn on the cob and potato salad, Wade said. I can bring over some pudding, Jess said. They had reached the living room. She looked over at Leo and said, time to head home. Can I watch some more TV? Leo whined. No. It's getting late, Jess said. Taking his time, Leo gathered together his crayons. He had dumped them all out earlier, but now he put them back one at a time while keeping an eye on the television. If he worked slow enough, he could possibly get in one more cartoon. Leo. Yes, Mom, Leo replied. She didn't need to say a word about why she was yelling at him. She always used the same tone of voice when he was dithering. He started putting the crayons away two at a time. Are you okay? Wade asked, concerned by her appearance and demeanor. I'm just tired, Jess said. Wade said, are you sure that you wouldn't like a cup of coffee or tea? No, Jess answered sharply. I don't mean to pressure you. It's just that you look a little upset, Wade said. Thanks for the offer. You're a nice guy, Wade, Jess said, putting a hand on his arm. It seemed to her that he was always there, reaching out with a helping hand. If she hadn't had such a bad night, she would have enjoyed a cup of tea with him. All she wanted at the moment was to be alone. Leo finally packed away the last crayon. He walked over to his mother and said, I'm ready. Jess said, thanks a lot for watching him tonight. My pleasure, Wade said. He walked the pair over to the side door and let them out. He said, good night, Jess. Good night, Leo. Night, Uncle Wade, Leo said. Good night, Wade, Jess said. Wade watched the pair make the short trek across the two driveways to the side door of Jess's house. He was worried about Jess. Her behavior suggested that something pretty bad had happened on the date. She came home less than 2 hours after leaving on her date. Her eyes were red from crying, and she was claiming that 8 at night was late. Something was definitely wrong, and he had an idea what it was. He went into his office and started up the computer. After 10 minutes of surfing the net, he stared at a web page, feeling sad. There on the page was a picture of a woman in a bikini who looked a lot like Jess, although her face was blurred out. The ad stated she was available for one night, only at the rate of $180 an hour. Anguished, he said, oh, Jess, you didn't. Patrolling the mall early Saturday morning meant staying out of the way of the horde of mall walkers who descended upon the place. Little old ladies who walked at a snail's pace blocked the paths of soccer moms who power walked. Occasionally a walker would trip for no apparent reason, and he would have to write up a report. About once a year, an elderly walker would clutch his or her chest, and he would have to call for an ambulance. Wade hated working Saturday mornings. It wasn't the mall walkers who made him feel that way. After all, they were there every morning. He hated the horde of teenage girls that would arrive shortly after the stores opened. It seemed like every weekend one or more of them would get talked into shoplifting some item from a store. It was his job to take statements from the store personnel and the suspect. The girls traveled in packs, chattering and acting like a troop of angry baboons. He wished he had a nickel for every time one of them had made a nasty comment about his weight and general build. He wasn't the only target of their biting tongues. Every Saturday, he was called upon to break up a couple of shouting matches. Wade made his way around the mall while stores were opening. His route took him by the candle shop where Mrs. Carson was trying to raise the metal gate. She was a short woman, an inch shy of 5 feet tall, and always had trouble raising and lowering the gate. It seemed to him that the elderly woman was shrinking. Hello, Mrs. Carson. Let me help you with that, Wade said while approaching the store. Thank goodness you're here, Wade. I can never get that damn thing all of the way up, Mrs. Carson said. Wade reached up and pushed the gate so that the storefront was completely open. She could get it most of the way up, but the last foot always gave her troubles. There was a little footstool that she could use, but it was a lot easier when Wade helped out. He said, there you go. I don't know what I'd do without you, Mrs. Carson said. She gave him a big smile. You'd hire someone taller to open the store in the morning, Wade said, repeating a conversation that took place nearly every morning. I hired a new girl. You might want to stop by and meet her. She's real cute, Mrs. Carson said. Wade frowned. Mrs. Carson was one of a number of store owners who was always trying to fix him up with young women. Half in jest, he mentally referred to them as the gray-haired matchmaking brigade. They meant well, but young attractive women had their sights set a little higher up the social scale than him. I'll do that, Mrs. Carson, Wade said. Mrs. Carson said, don't give me that sour look. You'll like her. Me liking her isn't the problem, Mrs. Carson, Wade replied. Getting her to like me is. Balderdash and poppycock. You're a nice young man, Mrs. Carson said. A girl would have to be pretty shallow to let a good catch like you get away. Thank you, ma'am, Wade said. This was about the time when the conversation would get awkward. Usually she would start to discuss his past failures to win the attraction of the women to whom he had been introduced. Rather than continue on with the topic, he said, "I better get on with my route. Stop by later, Wade," Mrs. Carson said. "Yes, ma'am," Wade said. She watched him walk away thinking it was a shame that such a nice young man was still single. She returned to the store to finish preparing for a day of sales. Weekends had a lot of browsers who picked up candles and smelled them, but not a lot of sales. That meant she had to spend a lot of time straightening out the displays. Monique was zipping down the mall on her wheelchair. She had a special tray that held a dozen medium cups of coffee. She had a part-time business as a mall runner working afternoons and weekends. She delivered items from the food court to business owners who couldn't get away from the store. Basically working for tips, she pulled in a decent income despite having lost both legs in an automobile accident. "Hey, Wade, how's it going?" Monique asked. Grinning, she pulled up to a stop in front of Wade. He had helped her get her business started. She had been at the mall looking for a part-time job. He had suggested the delivery business to her, and then had taken her around to meet all of the people working in the food court. It took about 3 days for her to get established as a fixture in the mall. "It's going. Looks like you're busy today," Wade said while gesturing to the tray of coffees. Monique smiled and said, "Saturday mornings are always good for business. Too many of the shop clerks drink too much Friday nights and get in late Saturday mornings. They're all screaming for coffee. Don't let me delay you." "We can't have hangovers hurting business," Wade said with a grin. "I'll see you around," Monique said, heading off down the mall. "Take it easy," Wade said, watching her go. She could really move that wheelchair. For a high school student, she wasn't going to let a little setback stop her. She was always looking for an angle to improve her business. Sometimes she delivered goods from one store to another. Wade thought to himself, she's going to go far in life. The shoe store was running a little late in opening that morning. Wade stopped in front of the store and saw that the manager was running around taking care of some last-minute details. He waved to the manager, who acknowledged him with a curt nod. Wade continued on his way, knowing the store would be open soon. He was supposed to write up any store that opened late, but he normally gave them a few minutes leeway. There was no need to beat up someone who was trying to make a living. He felt sorry for a guy in his mid-40s stuck selling shoes in a discount shoe store. It wasn't the kind of future that young men out of high school dreamed about. The remaining stores on that end of the mall were all open. He paused at the door of each store and waved to the salespeople inside. He knew most of the folks working in the smaller stores by name. The large department stores were a different matter. They provided their own security in the form of surveillance cameras and seldom called upon mall security unless there was a major problem. Upon hearing the rattle of the gate at the shoe store, he took his push-to-talk radio from his belt and called in that all of the stores on the west wing of the mall were open. Shelley, the young woman working the office, acknowledged his call. It was followed by a call from the security guard who was walking along the east wing. The hordes of teenage girls were beginning to arrive. There was a swarm of them over at the food court waiting in line to get cinnamon buns. He could hear them giggling from 40 feet away. One of them gave forth a shrill squeal that shot daggers through his brain. He sighed, thinking it was going to be a long day. He headed over to the taco stand for a cup of coffee. The taco place sold a breakfast burrito and coffee first thing in the morning. He didn't like the burrito, but preferred their coffee to the gourmet brands that the coffee shop sold and the short line compared to long line that formed up at the burger place. Stepping up to the counter, he said, "Hello, Sophia." "Hey, Wade," she replied. She held out a cup of coffee for him. "Just like you like it." "Thanks," Wade said. He dug through his pocket and pulled out his money clip. It took him a few seconds to find $2 bills. He dropped them on the counter and said, "Keep the change." "You always leave us a tip," Sophia said, collecting the bills. She made the change and dumped it into the tip jar they kept there to get a little of the change back for service. It helped make the low pay a little better. "How are the kids?" Wade asked. Sophia had 3 kids, aged 6, 8, and 9, who often spent the day at the shop. They tried to help out at the stand, but it was usually with activities out of sight of the customers. Having them there allowed Sophia and her husband to keep from having to hire an additional person. The accommodation made the little store solvent. Wade figured there were laws preventing kids from working like that, but he wasn't going to make the call. He knew that he was a little old-fashioned when it came to raising kids. He didn't think there was anything wrong with kids working in a family business. They learned to appreciate money and developed good work habits. The parents were able to take a little more money out of the store, and that benefited the kids. "They're getting the food ready for the lunch rush," Sophia answered. Wade said, "The morning is going to be overcast, but the afternoon will clear up. You'll probably get a good lunch crowd, but the evening rush is going to be more like a trickle." "See," Sophia said. Wade took a drink of his coffee. She was right. It was fixed just like he liked it. Sophia said. Mrs. Carson has a new girl starting work today. You might want to stop by and meet her. She already told me, Wade said. No need for the ugly face. I'm sure you'll like her, Sophia said. Wade wondered why all of the women thought he was the problem. Rather than address the question, he said, I guess I better make another round of them all. I start talking about senoritas, and you run away, Sophia said in a teasing voice. You know how bachelors are, Wade said. See, Sophia said. She wondered how a nice guy like him remained single. She recognized that he wasn't great looking, but he was a real nice guy. There had to be a woman out there for him. I'll be by later, Wade said. Adios, Sophia said. Adios, Wade replied. He waved to Monique when she wheeled towards him with another tray of coffees. After coasting for the fraction of a second it took to wave at him, she continued on her way. Mornings and lunchtime were two of her busiest times of the day on weekends. He'd see her a half-dozen times rolling from one end of the mall to the other. There was an argument between two packs of girls. It was nothing physical, just a lot of name-calling. He would have ignored it except the language wasn't appropriate for a family environment. These girls liked to drop the F-bomb for the shock value. He stepped in and sent the two groups to opposite ends of the mall. It seemed to him that he probably walked 10 miles a day. He shouldn't have a weight problem with that much exercise, but he did. He wasn't really fat, but he was big-boned and just heavy-looking. He wasn't sure why he was so heavy. He took his lunch break in the food court. A food order from the Chinese place served as lunch. Of course, Mrs. Wong informed him about the new girl starting at the candle shop. There was the typical exchange about how he would like her. All of this was based on the word of Mrs. Carson. After lunch, there was a shoplifting incident at the earring shop. A young woman had tried to walk off with a pair of earrings. Unfortunately for her, the store owner had a sharp eye for shoplifters. It was necessary when the stock he carried was small and easy to hide. He had her pay for them, and she was warned never to come back in the store. Keeping out of the discussion as much as possible, Wade wrote up the incident. He knew that next week the girl would be back in the same store again. Hopefully the next time she visited the mall she wouldn't steal anything. The afternoon dragged on. The mall crowd reduced in size commensurate with the improving weather outside. With the changing of seasons, nice weather was coming to an end, and no one wanted to waste a chance to enjoy it while it was here. It was approaching the end of his shift, and he figured it was about time to face Mrs. Carson. He headed over to the candle shop. Before entering, he checked out the woman standing beside Mrs. Carson. She was an attractive woman in a girl-next-door kind of way. Chloe nudged Mrs. Carson and said, "Check out the fat guy in the mall security uniform." "That's Wade," Mrs. Carson said with a chill in her voice. "That's the guy you want me to meet?" Chloe asked incredulously. "Yes," Mrs. Carson answered. "I don't do fat guys," Chloe said contemptuously. "He's a nice guy," Mrs. Carson said. She would have said more, but Wade was approaching the counter. She turned to him and said, "Hello, Wade." "Hello, Mrs. Carson," Wade said. He gave a short nod to Chloe, noting the contemptuous look she was giving him. "My shift is about over, and I thought I'd stop by to see if there was anything you needed." "That sure is thoughtful of you." "I think everything here is under control," Mrs. Carson replied. "I'm glad to hear that," Wade said. Mrs. Carson glanced over at Chloe and decided that an introduction wasn't necessary. She wasn't very pleased with the woman's attitude. In fact, her opinion of the young woman had lowered significantly. "I guess we'll see you Tuesday," Mrs. Carson said. "Sure," Wade said. He glanced over at Chloe and then back to Mrs. Carson. It was pretty obvious that an introduction wasn't on the menu. He was pretty sure he knew the reason. Wade said, "Have a nice day." "You too," Mrs. Carson said. Wade left the candle shop feeling a little humiliated by the awkward conversation. Everyone there knew why he had stopped by the candle shop. The absence of an introduction spoke volumes. Disheartened, he left the mall. Rather than going straight home, he headed towards the grocery store to get food for the barbecue. Jess and Leo were coming over to the house later. After the humiliation in the mall, he was looking forward to some friendly company. At least Jess treated him nicely and wasn't always trying to fix him up with women. Spending an evening with her definitely beat spending another evening alone. He just hoped that Jess was in a better mood than the previous evening. At the store, he headed over to the meat department. He grabbed a package of 4 hamburger patties. Looking at the package, he decided to grab 2 steaks, figuring that he and Jess could eat them tonight with a burger for Leo. He could invite them over for burgers Sunday. Leo wouldn't mind having hamburgers 2 nights in a row. One of the reasons he shopped at this particular store was that Mel worked there. He had known her since high school. They had run with the same crowd. It had slowly disbanded over the years with people getting married and caught up in family life. Wade made a point of keeping up with what everyone was doing with their lives. He stood in line at Mel's register. When it was his turn, she said, "Hey, Wade." How's it going? It's going good enough, Wade said pleasantly. 2 steaks and some burgers. Are you having a party? Mel asked. Just having Jess and Leo over for a little barbecue, Wade answered. How's she doing? Mel asked. She didn't know Jess all that well, but had worked with Jimmy in the grocery store. That had been before he had joined the army. She had been shocked upon learning of his death. She's getting by, Wade answered. Mel said, I like Jimmy. It's a shame he was killed. You can say that again, Wade said. She's lucky to have you for a neighbor, Mel said. A single mother appreciates having someone reliable around. I don't do much of anything, Wade said. I know you, Wade. You're a softie, Mel said. Glancing over at the register, she said, that'll be $18.23. Wade swiped his debit card through the reader. While entering his PIN number, he said, meat sure is getting expensive. I hear that about 1,000 times a day, Mel said. We're burning our crops. That's never a good thing, Wade said. What do you mean? Mel asked. The idea that people would burn crops was shocking, and she wondered if she had missed something on the news. We're turning corn into gasoline. That's the same as burning our food. Corn is not only eaten by people, but is used to feed chickens and cows. When we turn corn into fuel, the price of chicken and beef goes up. Hell, the price of nearly everything goes up, Wade said. I never thought about it that way, Mel said. She made a mental note to use that explanation when people complained about the price of meat. She didn't think it would help any, but it might eliminate a few minutes of griping about stores trying to rip off customers. The worse the economy got, the more customers complained about prices. Nobody does. I get angry every time I see an ad on television about biofuels. I can't help thinking that they might as well be advertising that they are increasing the prices of food, Wade said. Mel handed him the plastic bag containing his meat. She said, I'll see you around. Sure thing, Mel. Give your husband my regards, Wade said. Will do, Mel said. Wade left the store thinking about turning corn into fuel. He had been reading about Sherman's march to the sea. Sherman's troops had burned everything, including crops, along the way. The damage done by their actions had destroyed the economy of the South for years. It had been a long winter without food. He wondered what the long-term damage of the biofuel industry would be. There wasn't a single doubt in his mind that it would be bad. It was Sunday morning and Wade was headed out the door. Although he regularly went to church, he was not dressed for church. His baggy pants, faded t-shirt, and torn-up sneakers wouldn't be welcome in polite society. He put his cap on and headed down the street. 2 houses down, he walked over to the front door and rang the bell. It seemed to take forever for anyone to answer it. Hey, Wade. How's it going? Henry asked. Henry was slender and of medium build with short hair. He had a tattoo of a dragon down his left arm. It was a holdover of his younger days as a fan of fantasy literature. He had rough hands that advertised he earned a living working with his hands. Some folks might have been put off by his appearance, but the expression on his face gave him a friendly, happy look. Can't complain, Wade answered. What can I do for you? Wade said. I heard you were painting. Yep. The old battle axe wants me to paint the nursery before she drops the kid, Henry said with a wink. I heard that. Sorry. The kindly pregnant woman wants her loving husband to fix up the nursery before the blessed event occurs, Henry said. That's better. Wade listened to the exchange before he said, I thought I'd drop by and see if you needed a hand. That's real neighborly of you, Henry said. I was just about to get started. That's about what I figured, Wade said. Come on in. I'm sure that Daisy would love to chat with you for a bit while I put on some shoes, Henry said. Wade entered the house. Daisy, a small woman, was seated on the couch. She was wearing a maternity dress that looked like someone had hidden an overinflated beach ball inside it. She struggled a little to get up and then gave up. She was nearing the end of her pregnancy and wasn't moving in an agile manner. Hello, Wade, Daisy said while waving at him. Hello, Daisy. You're looking good, Wade said. I hope you don't mind me not getting up, Daisy said. Stay comfortable, Wade said. It looks like you're due any day now. 1 week, Daisy said, patting her protruding belly. I'll be glad to rid of this extra weight. Have you decided on a name for him? Wade asked. Henry wants to name him Waldo. Like that is ever going to happen, Daisy said. Waldo is a great name, Henry shouted from the bedroom. We're not naming the kid Waldo, Daisy shouted. So what are you going to name him? Daisy said. We'll probably name him after his father and call him Junior. That sounds reasonable to me, Wade said. Henry gave me a choice. It was either that or Waldo, Daisy said. Henry came out of the bedroom and said, I'm ready. We've got to get that room painted before Waldo shows up. It's almost too late, Daisy said. You didn't pick out the color for the room until yesterday, Henry said. That's because it took me until yesterday to convince you to paint it some color other than white, Daisy said. The tone of their discussion wasn't argumentative. Everything was said in a teasing tone of voice. Wade knew from past experience the couple would tease and kid around, but when there was a real problem, they both got very serious and pulled together. My dad always said that walls were supposed to be white, Henry said. Wade said, my dad always said the same thing. Mom disagreed. That's why there's not a single white room in my folks' house. Henry laughed. Daisy said, your father is a very wise man. I think so, Wade said. Henry said, I've got everything set up to start painting. Let's get to it, Wade said. Henry went over to where Daisy was resting on the couch. He leaned down so that his head was next to her belly. In a soft voice, he said, where's Waldo? He put a hand on Daisy's belly and said, ah, here's Waldo. Smiling, Daisy rolled her eyes. Get out of here. Yes, ma'am, Henry said. The two men went into the second bedroom that was to be the nursery. The furniture had been pushed into the center of the room and covered with a drop cloth. The floor was covered with a drop cloth as well. 2 cans of paint and 2 rollers, one for the flat wall and one for the corner, were in a pile in the corner of the room. She picked out a baby blue paint. We're going to leave the trim white, Henry said. Wade looked at the walls to assess how much prep work would be required. He was surprised since it looked freshly painted. It looks like you painted it white recently, Wade said. Henry said, yep. She wanted it white 6 months ago. I painted it white. Now she wants it blue. I'm going to paint it blue. Whatever it takes to keep the peace, Wade said. He knew that pregnant women often change their minds, and arguing wasn't the best policy if you wanted peace. He knew Henry was smart enough to know that. Henry held up a roll of tape and asked, do you want to tape the trim? Knowing Henry was giving him the easy job, Wade answered, sounds good to me. I'll start painting the ceiling, Henry said. The two men went to work without any additional talk. Wade taped the trim around the bedroom door frame and the closet door frame. When he got around to the first window, he noticed that they were new. He had known Henry had done a lot of work around the house, but had somehow missed seeing him change the windows. I see you got new windows, Wade said. Yep. We don't want Junior to grow up in a drafty room, Henry said. He hadn't realized how much money it cost to have a baby. He had thought the biggest expense would be the hospital bill. No one had told him about the other things they would have to do to provide a good home for the baby. Fixing the house up had cost a fortune. They had gone through the house and child-proofed everything. Every drawer and cabinet had been fitted with devices that prevented them from being opened. There were minor and major repairs to make it a healthier place to live. Carpets had been replaced because the old ones were too dirty. There had been some new furniture purchases, including a crib that had eaten into their budget. Fortunately, their friends and family had given them a lot of stuff. In fact, Wade had brought over a very nice changing table that looked like it cost a fortune. Daisy had been so overwhelmed that she had cried upon seeing it. Wade said, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, you have to take care to keep the baby healthy. The damn things cost $500 each after getting them installed, Henry said. It would have cost more, but the guy dropped the price for cash payment. Cash is king, Wade said. You can say that again. The government makes it damn near impossible to do business, Henry said. Wade asked, speaking of business, how is the car repair business? Better than ever. People are fixing cars rather than buying new ones. We've got more customers than we can handle, Henry answered. They would have hired more people to work there, but the owner had no clue what the new laws would mean in terms of keeping anyone he hired. The owner was afraid Congress was going to increase his taxes. The insurance company had already increased its rates. Everyone was working overtime. Henry wasn't going to complain since he could use the extra money. That's good, Wade said. It's not that good at the mall. The mall had lost a number of stores over the past 2 years. There had always been a turnover of stores in the past, but even some of the stores that had been there for ages had closed. There were a number of empty stores waiting for someone to rent them. A number of chain companies had taken to opening temporary stores that were open only for the holiday season. There was a costume company that rented a spot for the 2 months before Halloween and then switched over to Christmas decorations after Halloween. 2 toy companies had each rented a spot for the 2 months before Christmas. Considering that a lot of retail stores made the majority of their money between Thanksgiving and Christmas, only being open during that time period made a lot of sense. It did mean that a lot of people didn't have jobs during the rest of the year. Henry said, it keeps me busy. At least I'm working. There is that, Wade said. I noticed you had Jess and Leo over last night, Henry said. He had been cooking some burgers out in the backyard when he noticed Wade hosting a barbecue of his own. His wife had commented Jess could do worse than to hook up with Wade. Of course, she had immediately followed that comment with another one about how Wade would have to lose some weight before Jess would be interested in him. After all, Jimmy had been a hunk. Wade said, yeah, she's having a rough time. You know, Money problems. I thought having them over for a little barbecue would help cheer her up. That's nice of you, Henry said. She really misses Jimmy, Wade said. They were still basically newlyweds when he was killed, Henry said. They had been married for 3 years, Wade said. Henry grinned. Like I said, they were still newlyweds. Daisy and I have been married 2 years. I still feel about her like I did the day I married her. Wade said, You're lucky. You aren't saying anything I don't already know. I've got a great wife and I can't wait for Waldo to get born, Henry said. We're not naming him Waldo. She's got good ears, Wade remarked. She learned that at Battle Axe School, Henry said, talking in a stage whisper that was sure to carry to the next room. I heard that. See, Henry said. Wade laughed. Henry was always making comments like that, but everyone knew he was teasing her. Heaven help the person who insulted Daisy. They would not like Henry's reaction. Henry would be all over them like a duck on a June bug. Henry said, I'm looking forward to that whole fatherhood thing. I mean, I can't wait for the day when I teach him how to catch a baseball. We'll do t-ball, and then Little League. What about changing diapers? Wade asked, knowing that raising a baby wasn't all fun and games. Big deal. I do that for my sister's kids all of the time, Henry said. He waved the roller around. My dad always said that if you make a kid, then you better take care of the kid. He said that included changing diapers. My dad didn't say anything about that. I figure he figured that I wasn't going to be making any kids, Wade said. There's a girl out there for you, Henry said. What about Jess? Daisy called out. She's got really good ears, Wade said, looking back at the bedroom door. She does, Henry said. She's got a point. What about Jess? Jess has got too much going for her to settle for fat security mall cop, Wade said. He held up a hand to forestall any arguments. Don't argue that one. You'll lose. Okay, I won't argue, but I think you're wrong, Henry said. Wade said, she's still in mourning. It's going to take a real special guy to snap her out of that. You might be right, Henry said. You're a special guy, Daisy shouted. I got the gray-haired matchmaking brigade at work trying to fix me up with every new girl who starts working at the mall. I'm tired of it, Wade said. He sighed. It's just that you're a great guy, Wade. Don't even try to deny that for a minute. Who came over here to help me paint without me even asking you to help? You did. You do things like that all of the time, Henry said. He knew that Wade mowed Jess's lawn. In the winter, Wade shoveled the snow off his driveway and sidewalk and then helped 3 widows who lived on the street by clearing the snow off their driveways and sidewalks. There were times when Henry was embarrassed after watching Wade out there working so hard and had to go out to help just to feel better about himself. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that you could count on Wade for a helping hand. If an emergency babysitter was needed, call on Wade. If you needed a ride to work, call Wade. The guy always shrugged it off, claiming that the alternative was sitting alone in his house. He never asked for help. Wade picked up the corner roller and said, I'll start on the corners. Don't use that. I got a package of disposable corner paint pads over there somewhere. They work better, Henry said. Wade leaned over and found the corner painting pads in a plastic bag with the logo of a hardware store on it. He pulled one out of the package and looked at it. He looked over the package to see how to use it. There were pictures without any text. It looks easy enough to use, Wade said. The package doesn't say they are disposable. As far as I'm concerned, at $1 each they are disposable, Henry said. I like them. No cleaning. I just toss them into an empty paint can when I'm done with them. No muss. No fuss. He decided that Henry was right after painting the corner formed by the ceiling and the wall. It left a nice, even strip of paint along the ceiling and the wall. It was a bit of a reach to get that high, but Wade was tall enough to reach it. Are you going to throw a party when Waldo is born? Wade asked. His name is Junior. She's got really good ears, Wade said. I want to throw one. I figure some hot dogs, beer, sausages, beer, maybe a tray of ziti, beer, and some beer, Henry said. Knowing that Henry was a teetotaler, Wade laughed. I'll bring some beer over. Nah, you're a guest, Henry said. Wade said, no way. I got a better idea. We can have the party at my place. We can host it, Henry said, protesting. Wade said, no, think about it. Mother and child can rest in peace at home. Daisy is going to be tired and babies sleep all of the time. Having a crowd over here will tire out Daisy and keep the baby awake. They can come visit the party when Junior is awake. Folks can come over here 1 or 2 at a time and see the baby. Maybe, Henry said, thinking it did make a bit of sense. Wade added, you won't have a mess to clean up afterwards, and I know Daisy will appreciate not having to clean up after a party. I'll make sure you'll get lots of leftovers so Daisy won't have to cook. That does sound kind of nice, Henry said. We'll schedule it for the first Saturday after the baby is born, Wade said. Henry stood there puzzled, trying to figure out when that would be. Giving up, he said. We aren't sure when the baby will be born. How can we schedule it? We'll do it a week after the baby is born. Let's say that the baby is born Friday night. We can't have the party Saturday because most people won't know, Wade said. So we do it the next Saturday. What if it is born Sunday? Henry asked. Then we have it the next Saturday, Wade answered. I guess that makes sense, Henry said. You better handle the invitations. I'll invite people from around the neighborhood after the baby is born, but you'll probably want to invite the folks from work. There are probably people I don't know that you'll want to invite, Wade said. He was mentally putting together a list of meats he could cook out on the grill and side dishes that would go along with it. With a little effort, he felt that he could handle 30 people if Jess opened up her backyard as well. Chairs would be a problem, but he figured he could borrow some from the other neighbors. He hoped the weather would cooperate. October weather was unpredictable. That could be a lot of people, Henry said. We'll try to keep it to under 30, Wade said with a negligent shrug of his shoulders. He slapped his forehead with his palm. We'll have to have it on a Sunday. I work Saturdays. Sunday? We can't have it on Sunday. People have to work Monday, Henry said. We're not having a drunken fest. We're celebrating the birth of Junior, Wade said, dismissing the objection. We'll schedule it for the afternoon. Everyone who goes to church should be home by then, and it can end around 7 or so. I guess, Henry said. Henry. What? Honey. Henry called back. I need to pee, Daisy called out. Henry whispered. She can't get off the couch. You better help her, Wade said. Henry said. I should leave her there to suffer a bit. I heard that. The day the party to celebrate Junior's birth was held turned out to be a blustery fall day. Orange, red, and yellow leaves dropped from the trees to be carried by the wind. The rustle of dry leaves rubbing against other leaves provided a background noise easily recognizable as the sound of fall. People wore windbreakers, sweaters, or jackets trying to keep warm in the face of the chilly wind, but their efforts failed. It was too cool for a light jacket, too windy for a sweater, and not cold enough for a heavy jacket. There were worse days to have an outdoor barbecue, but not many. At least it wasn't raining. The majority of people had retreated inside of Wade's house. It was very crowded in the house with over 20 people milling around in the kitchen and living room. In fact, it was standing room only. Two hardy individuals, Henry and Ray, stood around the grill with Wade while he cooked some sausages. The little kettle grill showed its age. He figured that he would have to replace it next season and wondered if he could pick up a good deal on one now. Wade was providing burgers, sausages, and wings. There was a lot of food inside the house since most of the neighbors had come over with side dishes knowing that he was providing the meat. Jess was inside helping manage the food. Holding his hands over the grill to warm them, Henry said. It sure was nice of you to do this for us. My pleasure. I just wish the weather was a little nicer, Wade said. He felt embarrassed to have squeezed so many people into his small house. The morning had been spent moving furniture out of the public areas of the house, so there would be room for everyone. It was still crowded. At least 2 or 3 women at a time were down at Henry's house visiting Daisy and Oing and Inge over the baby. Ray, one of the retired men who lived down the street, said, You can't control the weather. That's true, Wade said. He lifted one of the sausages off the grill and put it on a plate. He cut the sausage into bite-sized pieces. Ray stabbed each piece with a toothpick. He popped a piece of sausage into his mouth. Good. Ray mumbled around the piece of food. The fellow at the meat market down the street makes it himself, Wade said. It's good, Henry said after sampling a piece. Wade took another piece of sausage off the grill and set it on the plate. Ray had the knife ready to cut it into slices. There was going to be a pretty good pile of sausage by the time Wade was done with the batch cooking on the grill. I keep telling him that he needs to make more and market it to one of those natural food stores, but he says that he just wants to keep his butcher shop, Wade said. I'm kind of surprised that he's managed to stay open. Supermarkets have pushed most of the specialty stores out of business, Ray said. That's true. I go there because I know he buys the best meat and he cuts it to order, Wade said. You can't get that at the supermarket. Sure you can, Ray said. Right. They act like they are doing you a favor, Wade said dismissively. You try asking a butcher at the supermarket to package meat in half-pound packages sometime. You might be right, Ray said. When I get my meat at the supermarket, I have to buy their big packages and repackage all of the meat. It's a real pain in the butt, Wade said. Henry asked, Do you buy all your meat from him? No. I still buy most of my meat at the supermarket. It's that one-stop shopping thing, Wade answered. Henry said, I guess we're all guilty of that. After Wade put the last sausage on the plate, Ray went to work cutting it up. Henry grabbed a piece and popped it into his mouth. He was going to ask Daisy to go pick some up when she went shopping. Wade started putting burgers out on the grill. I keep trying to remember to swing by the meat shop, but I get caught up in other things and forget. I guess I'm in the habit of heading over to the supermarket. Strange to think of shopping as a habit, Ray said. Wade said, maybe I ought to start swinging by the butcher shop before heading over to the supermarket. I don't do the shopping. Daisy does it all, Henry said. He picked up the plate with sausages and added, I'll take these in the house. Great. Ask Jess if I need to put more wings in the oven, Wade said. Will do, Henry said. Ray watched Henry go in the house. Turning back to Wade, Ray said, did you hear about someone sending Jess money? She mentioned it to me, Wade said. She was very happy about it. Jess had been surprised one day to discover an envelope in the mail containing nothing except for two $100 bills. There wasn't a return address or a note explaining the money. It was quite a mystery. I wonder who would send her money like that, Ray said, eyeing Wade. Probably one of the men who served with her husband, Wade answered. He pressed down on a couple of burgers with his spatula, creating a flare-up when the grease hit the hot coals. I think it was a little closer to home than that, Ray said. That's an interesting idea, Wade said. You wouldn't happen to know anything about it? Ray asked. Wade said, if I wanted to give her some money, I could just walk next door. There's no need to mail it. That's true, Ray said. Unless you wanted to remain anonymous. There's no need to be anonymous. A lot of people in the neighborhood help her out. Henry has been taking care of her car. He only charges her parts, Wade said. You've helped her with plumbing. Only the simple stuff, Ray said. Still it helps, Wade said. I like Jimmy. He was a good neighbor, Ray said. It's a real shame patriotic folks are dying while people who hate the country stay home where it is safe. People like Jimmy are dying so those a-holes can ruin the country. I never served, Wade said. Ray looked at Wade and said, not having served in the military doesn't make you an a-hole. The a-holes are the ones who don't appreciate the sacrifice others make on their behalf. I could serve, Wade said. He felt that he could go over and help protect the country. If he were to die in the process, well, no one would really miss him. He wouldn't be leaving a widow behind like Jimmy did. Ray shook his head. He didn't know how to say it, but Wade would be the first guy killed in a battlefield. You aren't built for the military, Ray said. Face it, you're a nice guy, Wade. You aren't a fighter. It just ain't in you. Some kid over there will sucker you into a bad situation, and you'll be dead. I don't know. Maybe you're right, Wade said. Henry came out of the house laughing about something someone had said inside. He walked over to Wade. Jess already put some wings in the oven. Great, Wade said. Henry said, I'm going to check on the little woman in Waldo. You do that, Wade said. He was pretty sure that Daisy heard Henry call Junior Waldo despite the fact that she was indoors and 2 houses down. Junior is going to grow up to be a good-looking boy. He gets his looks from Daisy, Henry said jokingly. You're lucky, Ray said with equal humor in his voice. All my boys ended up looking like me. Not having anything to add to the conversation, Wade concentrated on cooking the burgers. He would love to have a kid or two. He felt there was no finer thing to aspire to than being a father. Henry said, I'll be back in a bit. Wade flipped the burgers to cook the other side. Watching Henry cut across the backyards to his home, Ray said, he's taking to being a father like a duck to water. He's going to be a good father, Wade said. Ray said, I'm not surprised. His dad was a good father. His dad was always there for him, Wade said. He'd have been a great grandfather. Henry and Wade been in high school together, although they were a year different in age. Henry's dad had attended every football game and driven the boys home from practice. Wade had made the team, but never got much time on the field. He was big and could fill a spot on the offensive line in a pinch, but he wasn't aggressive enough to really do the kind of job one would expect of a first-string player. Henry had been a tight end despite the fact that he wasn't really big enough to take the punishment of getting hit by the bigger guys. It was a shame that Henry's dad had been killed by a drunk driver 2 years earlier. It had really hit Henry hard. Wade had spent many an evening listening to Henry rant about drunk drivers. Although Henry talked about drinking, he hadn't taken a drink since the night his father died. He was the first to demand the car keys from anyone who had too much to drink. He'd just be a grandfather, Ray corrected. When Junior has a kid of his own, he would have been a great grandfather. You know what I meant, Wade said. Just razzying ya, Ray said. So when are you going to be a grandfather? Wade asked. I don't know, Ray said in disgust. His sons were married, but they didn't seem to be in a hurry to start a family. It seemed to him that too many people were waiting longer to get married, and even longer than that to start having children. His kids were in their 30s, and were talking like they were going to wait 20 years before starting a family. Ray said, I just hope that my daughters-in-law listen to their biological clocks someday soon. They aren't going to be happy to discover they can't have children if they wait too much longer. I've noticed a lot of women in their late 30s pushing baby carriages in the mall, Wade said. It seems to me like the more educated and wealthier a couple is, the longer they are waiting to have children. I don't know if that is a good thing or not. They can provide for them better, but I'm not sure they are able to relate to them as well. It would be more like grandparents raising a kid than a parent, Ray said. He sighed. Maybe my generation rushed into it. Most of us were parents by the time we hit 23. We couldn't afford to raise a family, but we did the best we could. I remember bringing home a couch my wife had bought one day before learning she was pregnant. I got home with the couch and she told me that we were expecting our first kid. She told me that after I had struggled to bring it into the house. I turned around and took the couch back because we couldn't afford it anymore. Even though we both agreed that it had to go back, my wife cried about the couch for years. I don't blame her. We ate the cheap hamburger until the kids were nearly out of school. You know, the garbage that is 73% lean and 27% fat. Cooking that stuff would make the whole house smell like grease. It formed a film on everything. We ate that lousy meat and stretched our money as much as we could. Tuna casserole, don't even use that word around me. I had so much of that crap that I get sick just smelling it. The kids may not have had the best stuff, but they never went without. The money I set aside for a boat went to braces. The money my wife set aside to redo the kitchen went to college tuition. I won't lie and tell you that we weren't disappointed, but taking care of your kids is a major responsibility. In a way, I think the boys are trying to avoid being responsible. They make good money, but they spend it almost as fast as they make it. They take expensive vacations, eat out all of the time, and buy every gadget that comes on the market. I want to tell them that it's time for them to grow up, but I keep my mouth shut. Why? Wade asked. They would just laugh at me, Ray said. Wade frowned. Why would they laugh? I'm sure they think I'm just an old-fashioned fuddy-duddy. My worldview doesn't fit the modern world. To tell the truth, they might be right. There's a lot of things going on today that I don't like. I never had an elected government official tell me that I was too stupid to understand what they are doing, Ray said. You aren't alone in thinking that way, Wade said. I walk around the mall and listen to folks talk. A lot people don't like what is going on today. Ray said, people like Henry are the future. He did something smart. I figured that he and Daisy would have a kid right after they got married. They waited a while and fixed up the house, saved some money, and grew up a little. He's raising the next generation, and I think he'll do a better job than we did. Did you ever tell him that? Wade asked. No. You don't tell people things like that, Ray said. Maybe you should. It helps to have people tell you what you're doing right, Wade said. I wish people would tell me what I'm doing right. You screw up and everyone is there telling you what you did wrong. I've always known when I've screwed up right after I did it. You might be right, Ray said. If Henry's dad were alive, he would be over here giving Henry advice. I think having someone who has been in trenches giving him advice is something that Henry really misses, Wade said. I'll think about it, Ray said. Wade said, your sons might not be so happy if you were to take Henry under your wing. That's true, Ray said thoughtfully. I bet in about a month, Henry and Daisy will be ready to get out of the house for an evening. I'm sure your wife would make a great babysitter. I'm positive your sons will be relieved to learn that she's getting her grandchild experience without their help, Wade said. I bet, Ray said dryly. His sons would really be happy to hear that, not? As competitive as they were, they'd end up having a race to produce the first grandson. He grinned when he realized what Wade actually meant. Ray said, yes, I bet they'd love to hear that. I'd better get the burgers off the grill before they burn, Wade said. You're good man, Wade, Ray said while holding up the plate. It didn't take Wade half a minute to pile the burgers on the plate. He figured between the sausages, burgers, and wings that there was enough meat to satisfy the crowd. If not, he could come back out and cook another couple links of sausage. Let's get them in the house before they get cold, Wade said. On entering the house, he was immediately faced with 8 people crowded together in his kitchen. It was never meant to handle that many people. He knew that he took up the space of 2 people. He felt like a bear in a china shop. There was only one way to make a little more room. Holding up the plate of burgers, he called across the kitchen, Hey, Jess, could you fix a plate for Daisy? I'll take it over there. Sure, Jess said from the other side of the kitchen. She put together a plate with a burger, a couple of slices of sausage, a couple wings, coleslaw, potato salad, and green bean salad. It was far more than Daisy would eat, but she figured that Daisy would appreciate being able to pick and choose. She passed the plate over to Ray's wife, who then passed it to Wade with a smile. He slipped out the back door and headed over to Henry's house. He's always thinking of everyone else, Ray said after the door shut behind Wade. He's a nice guy, Jess said. Ray asked, why aren't you trying to lasso him? Wade, he's a nice guy and all that, but he's like a brother to me. It would feel real icky to date him, Jess said. This wasn't the first time someone had asked her about Wade. She liked him, but not that way. Like everyone else, she thought it would be great if he found a girlfriend. She knew how other women viewed him and felt it would be a long time before he found a woman who would look past his appearance. Ray said, I bet he's heard that his whole life. He's that kind of guy. Real nice, but not, you know. He's not like Jimmy was, Jess said. I know, Ray said. It's a shame. He'd make some woman very happy. I'm sure he would, but the woman won't be me, Jess said apologetically. 30 minutes later, Henry was returning to the party. It seemed to him that it was getting colder than before. It was turning into a really ugly day. He found Wade standing out in the backyard warming his hands over the kettle grill. There wasn't any meat on the grill. Curious, Henry asked, what are you doing out here? It's kind of crowded inside. I thought I'd get some fresh air and let people move around a bit, Wade said. Henry snorted. Oh man, get inside and mingle. If anyone doesn't like the crowd, they can go home. They're my guests, Wade said. So go in and be a host, Henry said. Wade stood next to the fountain watching the young woman play her guitar. So far no one had complained about her, but it was just a matter of time. There was always somebody who would find something wrong with anything. Jesus could walk through the mall, and there would be some folks who would say he looked too old and others would complain that he looked too young. They would all complain that he was too scruffy, beard and robe and all that. In this case, someone would find a song objectionable and raise a stink. She finished her song and passed a hat around the crowd that had gathered to listen to her. Wade waited for the hat to return to the young woman before stepping up to her. She spotted him and turned away as if she didn't notice him. Have you got permission to be busking? Wade asked. I'm just trying to get a little money for food, the woman complained. Wade held up his hands and said, Whoa there. I just asked a question. Have you got permission to be busking? No, the woman said. Let's go over to the office and get you permission, Wade said. You're going to bust me, the woman said. No, I won't. You'll be back out here playing your guitar and singing your heart out in 10 minutes. If we get you permission, you won't have to leave when someone complains, Wade said. What if I don't get permission? The young woman asked. She had been chased out of a lot of places in her short career as a busker. She considered herself to be a wandering minstrel. It was a lost art in a world of iPods and shock videos. A lot of folks believe that wandering minstrels, buskers, and sidewalk artists were actually thieves. That usually left them getting chased off by law enforcement types. Are you kidding? With the way you play, they'll be inviting you back, Wade said. How do you know? The young woman asked. I listened to your last set. That was real nice. Not many people sing those old ballads anymore, Wade said. It's a nice change from that rap stuff. Oh, thanks. Hey, Wade, Monique said while rolling past on her wheelchair. I see you're keeping busy today, Monique, Wade said. Always, Monique said. She coasted for a second to wave at him. The young woman asked, Who was that? That's Monique. She's got a business delivering food and coffee to the people who work in the stores, Wade answered. After clearing out the money in her guitar case, she carefully packed her guitar. It was easy to see that she treated the guitar like a real treasure. Once the guitar was safe, she emptied the money out of her hat. It was a pretty good haul for a mall for the short time she had been there. At least she would be able to get something to eat. Okay, take me to your leader, she said, resigned that her gig in the mall was at an end. Wade headed towards the office without checking to see if she followed. She walked beside him, deciding to let this little drama play itself out. I suppose I ought to introduce myself. I'm Wade. Was your mother a Wade Ives fan? She asked. Yes, Wade answered. I wish she had named me after Clint Eastwood. I'd be a whole lot handsomer. The young woman laughed, taken by surprise by his self-depreciating sense of humor. If she was going to get thrown out of a mall, it was best if it was done by a nice guy. What's your name? Wade asked. Julia Lane. It's nice to meet you, Julia, Wade said. Come on and make a Superman joke, Julia said. I'm not that witty, Wade said. Julia said. Everyone makes a Superman joke. Not me. I don't make fun of people, Wade said. It's a tough enough world without someone making it worse. I do my best to make it a better world. It's a shame that more people don't feel that way, Julia said. Wade said, I agree. We're here. He held open the office door. Julia sighed and entered the office. Mrs. Rivas, Wade said. Shelley, the other woman who worked in the mall, swapped weekends with Mrs. Rivas. What can I do for you, Wade? The elderly woman asked. This is Julia Lane. She needs permission to play her guitar in the mall, Wade said. Another busker? Mrs. Rivas asked. Yes, Wade said. She sings ballads and folk music. I prefer to think of myself as a wandering minstrel, Julia said. I don't see any problems so long as you stay away from religious music and bad language, Mrs. Rivas said. She rummaged around through a desk drawer. She pulled out a stack of pink papers. After dating it, she said, Here you go. Just put this by your guitar case so people know that you're allowed to play here. Shocked, Julia picked up the form. What is this? That's a performance permit. Mrs. Rivas said, we have lots of entertainers coming into the mall for various reasons. There's a gym that has a group in for a morning exercise session every once in a while. Some of the stores have attractions to bring in customers. We just like to keep track of who is here. That's nice, Julia said. I'll take her back to the fountain, Wade said. The garden bench next to the food court has better acoustics and higher traffic, Mrs. Rivas said. That's true. I guess she can set up there, Wade said. Thank you, Julia said, surprised by the suggestion on how to improve her take. Wade opened the door and let Julia out. Mrs. Rivas said, Hey, Wade. She's good looking. I bet she'd go to dinner with you. Yes, ma'am. I'll keep that in mind, Wade said. He led Julia to the food court and pointed out the area Mrs. Rivas had recommended. Julia looked around thinking it would give her wide visibility. Almost all of the traffic to and from the food court would pass by there. Now that she wasn't worried about getting chased out of the mall, she was more than willing to attract as much attention as possible. Thanks, Wade. You're a nice guy, Julia said. I'll come around and make sure you aren't having any problems, Wade said. Like what? Julia asked. Wade said, someone trying to lift some money out of your case. That happens, Julia said. She once had a guy grab $60 out of her guitar case. There had been 3 $20 bills in it. It was nearly a third of her take for the day. She had been left in the position where she could chase him and leave the rest of her money behind, or let him go while protecting her earnings. It was frustrating. Wade said, You know, I've always liked the song Red River Valley. Julia picked up her guitar and double-checked its tune. She sang, From this valley they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile, for they say you are taking the sunshine that has brightened our pathway a while. Bert dropped a tin in the open guitar case and headed away to finish his rounds. It was nice when things worked out to the benefit of everyone involved. He hadn't taken more than 10 steps away when Monique rolled up. She slowed to keep pace with him. Monique said, She's a cutie. She's a good musician, Wade said. She's cute, Monique said. And she's cute, Wade admitted. Ask her out for dinner, Monique said. Wade said, Nah. She's probably got a guy waiting for her somewhere. If you don't, I will, Monique said. Go ahead. I'm sure she'll enjoy having dinner with you, Wade said. You know what I mean, Monique said. She rolled ahead of him with a couple of thrusts of her hands on the wheels of her chair. Wade called out by, Stupid man can't ask out a girl, Monique mumbled. Fortunately, Wade did not hear the comment. He was headed into the Halloween costume store to talk to the store owner. Max Whitwell was a real piece of work. He rented the space from August through December. For a month, the store sold back-to-school supplies. From the middle of September through the end of October, the store sold Halloween items including costumes, decor, and candy. From the beginning of November to the end of December, he sold Christmas decor. He completely redecorated the store with each change in stock and changed the name of the store. Hello, Max. It looks like business is good, Wade said while glancing around the store. It could be better. I'm worried about Christmas, Max said. Everyone in the mall is concerned about that, Wade said. He figured if anyone had a feeling for how the holiday sales were going, it would be Max. The man usually pushed twice the sales through his store of any other store in the mall. He saved nearly 2/3 of the annual rent for a store. He hired a rather large crew, but it was necessary for the volume of traffic the store generated. Back-to-school sales were acceptable and a little above last year, but not as good as 2 years ago. It worries me a bit since I don't think fewer kids are heading back to school this year. Halloween is just holding its own and will probably reach last year's level. I hope people are saving up to spend a bit on Christmas. I can't take a year worse than last year, Max said. You did well last year compared to everyone else, Wade said. Max replied, I make all of my money in 4 months. I carry almost no inventory, which means I get hit with taxes. I buy next year's goods with the money from this year, but I do that after the first of the year, and that makes the tax situation even worse. On top of all that, I have to make a house payment on a house where my mortgage is underwater. I didn't think about that, Wade said. He wasn't sure how all of that added up to being in a tough financial position, particularly that part about his mortgage being underwater. As far as he was concerned, a person didn't buy a house as an immediate investment. He believed people bought a house to be a home. Maybe it might go down in value for a while, but after 25 years the value had to be above what it was purchased for. He didn't voice his opinion. I think everyone has a house that is underwater, Wade said. I'm just hoping that Christmas is good this year, Max said. Wade nodded his head and returned to his route through the mall. He would pause and watch situations that looked like they might escalate into something unpleasant. None of them did. Julia took a short break from singing. She was surprised when Monique rolled up and handed her a cup of coffee without having asked for one. "I think you owe Wade dinner," Monique declared. "Excuse me," Julia said. Monique replied, "I think you owe Wade dinner." "Why?" "If someone had complained about you before he had taken you to the office, then you would have had to leave the mall. He didn't have to take you up there to get permission to play," Monique said. "It was nice of him," Julia said. "So take him to dinner," Monique said. "Did he put you up to this?" Julia asked suspiciously. She wondered if she had misjudged Wade. He seemed like a nice guy. Trying to cage a dinner out of her didn't seem consistent with her initial opinion of him. She also couldn't believe that he would put the young woman up to this. "Are you kidding, Wade?" "No way," Monique said with a laugh. "He would never do that." "I didn't think so," Julia said. "So are you going to ask him to dinner?" Monique asked. "I can't really afford it," Julia said. The take for the day was a lot better than she had hoped. It meant that she could stay in a low-end motel rather than sleep in the back of her car. She didn't want to sleep in her car that night. "Do you really think Wade would let you pay?" Monique asked. She faltered and then added, "I guess that was a stupid question. You don't really know Wade. He'd never let you pay. He's kind of old-fashioned that way." "I don't know. I really don't have much money," Julia said, looking toward the guitar case. "Think about it," Monique said. "Speaking of earning money, I better get back to work. My boss is an a-hole." "Who's your boss?" Julia asked. "Me," Monique said with a wink. She rolled off as quickly as she had come. Julia laughed at the obvious joke. After finishing her coffee, she picked up the guitar and went back to work. She understood all about working for oneself. The boss tended to be very unforgiving. She went through her set, putting her all into it. "That was real nice," an elderly woman said to her when she finished. "Thank you," Julia said, gesturing toward the guitar case. "So are you taking Wade out to dinner?" the woman asked. "What?" Julia asked. The woman said, "I'm afraid you'll have to do the asking. He'd never impose on you like that. He would feel like he was taking advantage of you." "I can't really afford it," Julia said. The woman dropped a 50 in the guitar case and said, "Now you can." "Thank you," Julia said, staring at the $50 bill. "Just be nice to him," the elderly woman said. "He's a sensitive man. A night out with an attractive young woman would do him a world of good." "I'll keep that in mind," Julia said. Throughout the afternoon, folks from all over the mall stopped by to talk to Julia. Some came with suggestions about where she could take him. Others voiced concerns that she might not treat him nicely. It was rather intimidating. Wade stopped by in the middle of the afternoon. He asked, "How's it going, Julia?" "It's going well," Julia said, not making a comment about all of her special visitors. "That's good. It is a little slow now, but the traffic should pick up in a little bit," Wade said, scanning the crowd. "I'm sure it will," Julia said. "I don't know how long you plan on staying here, but towards the evening you might want to head over to the movie theater. I'm sure that folks will appreciate having something interesting to do while waiting for the next movie," Wade said. The suggestion was a very good one. She looked over at the guitar case and saw the $50 bill sitting there. She noticed Monique seated on her wheelchair watching them. A glance over at the food court gave her the impression that nearly everyone over there was watching her. "I was thinking that I would take you out to dinner," Julia said. "No need to do that," Wade said, holding his hands up in protest. His protest was not the reaction she had expected. For a split second, she was speechless. "It would be my pleasure," Julia said. "Okay, but let me pay," Wade said. "That's all right. I can afford it," Julia said. Wade said, "You do this for a living, don't you?" "Yes," Julia answered. "I bet you have some good days and some bad days," Wade said. "Sometimes it feels like I have more bad days than good days," Julia said. "My income is a little more stable than yours." "Let me pay," Wade said. "You can probably use the money to hold you over during lean times." "Thanks," Julia said. Everything everyone had told her about Wade was proving to be true. He wasn't going to let her pay for the meal out of consideration for her circumstances. He wasn't the type she would normally look at twice. Of course, after traveling around the country, she knew that people came in all shapes and sizes with just as wide a variation in temperament. "Do you like seafood?" Wade asked. "I love seafood," Julia answered. "I get off at 5. "We can go whenever you are ready to give up here," Wade said. "5 would be fine," Julia replied. Wade nodded his head. He said, "You know, that might be a very good time for you to take a break. After dinner you could probably come back here and hit the movie crowd." Indian summer had arrived, and it looked like the weather was going to be glorious. The nights were chilly, but the days were nice. The really cold weather would be coming in a couple of weeks. Until then, people were taking advantage of the warm temperatures. Leaves needed to be raked, storm windows had to be put in place, and other little errands in preparation of winter had to be performed. Julia looked over the roof of her station wagon at the old house. Wade had been a perfect gentleman. She appreciated the long hot shower, the comfortable bed, and filling breakfast. She sighed thinking that it had been one of the nicest nights she'd had in a long time. The conversation over dinner and at the house afterwards had been fascinating. A lot of the songs she sang dated back to Civil War times. Their discussion about the background of the songs had lasted until late in the night. She knew some of the specific details concerning the origins of the songs, but he was able to provide the cultural and historical background that made her knowledge even more interesting. "Who are you?" Surprised by the chilly tone of voice in which the question was asked, Julia spun around to find she was face to face with a very attractive woman. She wondered if this was a girlfriend of Wade. Based on the comments of the people at the mall, the last thing she expected was a confrontation with another woman. "I'm Julia. What are you doing here, Julia?" "I'm getting ready to go to work," Julia answered, noticing the chill had not left the woman's voice. "I hope you were nice to him." "Who are you?" Julia asked. "I'm his neighbor, Jess." "Well, retract your claws, Jess." "We had a very pleasant evening," Julia said, adding a little frost to her voice. "Not that it is any of your business. Wade is a nice guy. We worry about him," Jess said. She wasn't ready to accept for a minute that a young attractive woman like Julia would have anything to do with Wade without having an ulterior motive. She hoped that Wade had taken steps to protect his valuables. "He is a nice guy," Julia said. "Will you be back?" Jess asked. "He invited me to stay tonight," Julia answered. Jess said, "Don't lead him on. Don't hurt him." Julia was surprised by how many people were watching over Wade. It seemed to her like everyone she met gave her the same warning to treat him nicely. In addition to the people at the mall, the waitress at the seafood restaurant had taken advantage of her trip to the ladies' room to give her a warning to be nice to Wade. It seemed like everyone knew Wade. "I won't," Julia said. "Now if you don't mind, I've got to get to work." "Fine," Jess said. Julia stopped by the office at the mall to pick up a permit to busk. Before searching for the forms, Mrs. Rivas asked about dinner. She visibly relaxed upon hearing that it had been a nice evening. The form magically appeared along with some advice about where to set up for the day. Julia was pretty sure that a negative report concerning the dinner date would have resulted in not getting a permit to work in the mall. She was still setting up when Monique rolled over to talk. Monique asked, "How did it go with Wade last night?" "It went well. I had a very nice evening with him," Julia answered. "You know, if I wasn't 17 and crippled, I would be all over him," Monique said. "Really?" Julia asked, surprised by the comment, but believing she meant it. If one was able to overlook the absence of legs below the knees, Monique was a cute girl. She also had a friendly, outgoing personality. The age difference, although significant now, wouldn't be a big deal in a couple of years. Monique was just waiting for the day when she could make her move on him. "He helped me when I came here hoping to get a minimum wage job. Because of Wade talking to folks, I run my own business and make a lot more than minimum wage. I'm going to college after I get out of high school. I know that I'll be able to do this no matter where I go to school. It's not many people who can set you up with a job that you like and can take with you no matter where you go," Monique said. "That's true," Julia said. "Wade suggested it, and then he helped make it happen. I can't thank him enough," Monique said. She had been one miserable teenager before getting this job. At a time when other girls her age were out dating, boys were not interested in a girl with no legs. When others were getting jobs, she was stuck in physical therapy, learning how to deal with the simplest of everyday tasks. Her mother had tried to keep her from looking for a job, afraid that the rejection she was sure Monique would get would further crush the young woman's spirit. She had been sitting near this very spot feeling depressed from store owner after store owner, telling her that they couldn't use her when Wade entered her life. He took one look at her and suggested the delivery business. 30 minutes later, she was in business. He had gotten permission from mall management and printed up a brochure with the help of the folks at the office supply store. He had then introduced her to everyone in the mall. Monique said, "One day Mrs. Carson got really sick, and she was running her store alone. Wade took the day off and watched the store for her while she went home. The mall would have fined her if she had closed up the store for the day. He used a day of his vacation to help her out." "That's remarkable," Julia said. "That's Wade." Holding her hand about 5 feet from the ground, Julia asked, "Mrs. Carson wouldn't happen to be an elderly woman about so tall?" "That's her," Monique said. "She gave me $50 to take Wade to dinner," Julia said. Monique said, "That doesn't surprise me." "Wow," Monique said. "I better get to work. My boss is an a-hole." "So is mine," Julia said with a grin. Throughout the day, people who worked in the mall stopped by to see how Wade's date had gone. And used to that kind of attention, it was getting embarrassing. There was this unspoken question about whether or not Wade had gotten laid. She pitied the poor girl who started dating Wade with serious intent. Mrs. Carson sat down on the bench beside Julia, waiting for the young woman to finish her song and pass the hat. Julia gave her pitch to get people to donate a little money for the pleasure of getting a little pleasure from a live performance. To what do I owe the pleasure of your company, Mrs. Carson? Julia asked. I wanted to hear how your dinner went, Mrs. Carson said. Julia dug in her pocket and pulled out a $50 bill. She held it out for Mrs. Carson. I didn't need this. Wade paid. I thought he would, Mrs. Carson said. Keep the money. You gave it to me to pay for dinner, Julia said. Mrs. Carson said, I know Wade. I knew he wouldn't let you pay. He's old-fashioned. I'm planning on leaving tomorrow, Julia said. Really? Why? I've got to head to where it is warmer. I usually sleep in my car. I would freeze to death living up here, Julia said. I guess that makes sense, Mrs. Rivas said. She sighed. I really hoped you might be the one for him. I'm a wandering minstrel. That makes having a relationship with a man a little difficult, Julia said. You aren't a very good one, Mrs. Rivas said. How can you say that? Julia asked, shocked by the observation. Wandering minstrels were part musicians, part storyteller, and part news reporter. I've heard you play music, but I haven't heard you tell a single story or say a word about how things are where you were last. You are supposed to share news about how things are elsewhere, Mrs. Rivas said. You're a traveling musician, not a minstrel. You're right, Julia said, finding that she couldn't argue the point. Mrs. Rivas said, I better get back to the store before Monique has to ring up a customer. She can't reach the cash register. That would be a problem, Julia said. Of course, I have that problem too. At least I can stand on a box, Mrs. Rivas said. Julia laughed until she realized that the elderly woman was serious. Sorry. No problem, the diminutive woman said. We all have little setbacks in life. You can't avoid them. I figure they're there so that we can get tough enough to deal with the big stuff. Julia watched her return to the store, thinking that Wade had a lot of people who took a serious interest in his life. She also gave thought to the comment that she wasn't a very good wandering minstrel. She wondered what kinds of stories she could tell between songs. In the modern age of 24-hour news coverage and polished Hollywood entertainment, she wondered what she could do. While playing her next set, she put the issue on the back burner. She made her money singing, and for now that is what she would do. She knew she would have plenty of time to think while driving towards California and warmer weather. The one thing she knew for a fact, she had stories about 3 rather remarkable people. This was a conversation that would have a long-lasting impact on her life. Without realizing it, she would come to a decision that led to a wide and loyal following. The stories she told about good people doing their best in adverse situations became famous. She formed the seed for a movement in which wandering minstrels once again became commonplace. For the moment she sang songs of times past to a transient crowd. The money slowly flowed into her guitar case. It wasn't a great day, but every little bit helped. Julia packed up her guitar at 5. She smiled upon seeing Wade heading her way. He was not aware of the heads sticking out the doors of stores watching him. She suspected the heads would disappear when they walked past on their way out of the mall. Hey Wade, she said. Hello, Julia. How was it today? Wade asked. Julia answered, it was pretty good. Great, Wade said. Are you ready to get some dinner? Sure, she answered. How about Italian? Wade asked. That would be lovely, Julia said. Surprising Wade, she took his hand while walking towards the mall exit. It was hard to keep from grinning at the idea of the rumors that would fly when they left. She had no doubt that Monique would be riding around talking to everyone. The Italian place wasn't a particularly romantic setting. Set in a strip mall, the open front made intimacy a little difficult to achieve. The owners, Lawrence and Jamie, weren't exactly the kind of people who one expected to run an Italian place. Lawrence was obviously of Greek heritage while Jamie was of Irish descent. The couple knew Wade and came out to greet him when they stepped into the place. By this time, Julia wasn't surprised at their reaction to Wade's arrival. Once they were seated, Wade asked, What are your plans? I was hoping to leave for California tomorrow. I want to get down south before the cold weather hits, Julia answered. You might wait a day. I was talking to Henry earlier, and he volunteered to check out your car. I'd feel a lot better if I knew your car was in good shape. It is kind of dangerous for a woman to travel alone in an old car. He'll only charge you parts if there is something really wrong with it, Wade said. I don't think I can afford it, Julia said with a frown. Don't worry about, Wade said dismissively. He'll call you before doing anything that costs money. Just make sure that he does, Julia said. I'll talk to him, Wade said. Changing the subject, he said, Everything on the menu is good. I'm going with the lasagna. That sounds good, Julia said. Wade leaned over and whispered, Jamie makes the best lasagna in the state. Larry claims that is the only reason he married her. By the way, never call him Larry in here. He wants to be called Lawrence. I'll keep that in mind, Julia said. Wade closed his menu and set it aside. When Julia did the same, Lawrence made his way over to the table carrying a basket with hot bread and a small plate. He set out the plate, which he then filled with olive oil. He grabbed the pepper grinder and added fresh ground pepper to the olive oil. Lawrence said, "A simple little starter before the meal." "I love this," Julia said. Smiling, Lawrence asked, "Lovely lady, what will you have?" "Wade recommends the lasagna," Julia answered. "Very good choice," Lawrence said. "The usual for you, Wade?" "Yes, Lawrence," Wade said. "2 lasagnas coming up," Lawrence said. He backed away from the table and headed towards the kitchen. On the way, he sent one of the waiters over to their table with glasses of water. Julia said, "How long have you known the owners?" "A couple of years. I used to come in here occasionally because Jamie makes the best lasagna in the state. They were having some problems establishing a clientele, so I volunteered to put some flyers around the mall," Wade said. "It looks like it worked," Julia said. "It was a pretty good crowd for a Sunday night. Henry probably helped more than me." "The garage where he works is right down the street," Wade said. Julia studied Wade for a few seconds. Finally, she asked, "How many places did you drop off flyers?" "I have no idea. I just stopped at every place between here and the mall," Wade answered. "That was very nice of you," Julia said. Somehow she wasn't surprised to learn that. It seemed to her that when Wade helped someone, he went all out. "Not really," Wade said. "Would you excuse me for a minute? I'm going to wash my hands." "I've been playing the guitar all day," Julia said. "Okay," Wade said. He tore off a little bread and dunked it in the olive oil. Julia walked past the kitchen on her way to the restroom. She could hear Lawrence and Jamie talking about how they needed to do something special for Wade and his date. It was touching to hear the way they talked about Wade. She returned to the table after her visit to the ladies' room. She had just settled in when Lawrence appeared with a dish of mussels. He placed the dish between the two of them with a flourish. Wade looked at it and asked, "What's this?" "Zuppa di cause," Lawrence answered. "In English, Italian mussels. They smell good," Wade said. A waiter showed up with a bottle of wine. Lawrence took it from him and poured 2 glasses. Setting the bottle on the table, he said, "You must have a little wine with your meal." "Wow, thanks," Wade said. Lawrence lit a candle and then left the table. A moment later, the lights in the restaurant were lowered. Wade said, "Someone must be celebrating an anniversary or something. They don't usually try to set a romantic mood like this." Julia stared at Wade. Halloween showed up at Wade's house big time. The whole front yard was decorated like a cemetery with tombstones sporting humorous little sayings. Fog flowed over the ground, and spooky noises originated from speakers that had been carefully placed out of sight. Wade, dressed up like a farmer in overalls with a straw hat, was seated in a lawn chair in front of the house. He had a big plastic pumpkin filled with candy bars and a pot of hot cider on a television stand next to his chair. It didn't take much imagination to know that his house was a favorite stop for kids and their parents. The kids loved the candy and the parents enjoyed the hot cider. His first visitors were Henry, Jr., and Daisy. Daisy was pushing a stroller. Being too young to wear a real costume, Jr. was wearing a Superman bib. It was kind of cute. "Hey, Wade," Henry said. "Hello, Daisy, Henry, and Jr., Wade said. Henry looked at all of the Halloween decor. He asked, "Have you got enough stuff here?" "Maybe," Wade said. "How did you get all of this stuff?" "You didn't have it last year," Henry said. "Last year, I bought the last of the stock from Maxwell at the mall. I got Halloween and Christmas stuff at about 10 cents on the dollar," Wade answered. He had purchased a $100 fog machine for $10. All of the headstones had come to $5. The plastic pumpkin had come to $1. The skeleton in the corner that made spooky sounds had been $2. He had gotten even more stuff for Christmas. "That's a good deal," Daisy said. "If you tell me what you want, I'll see if I can get it for you." "It'll have to be after Christmas, though," Wade said. "That would be great," Daisy said. "I'll let you know what he's got left," Wade said. Knowing the answer to his question, Henry pointed over at the pot and asked, "What's that?" Wade answered, "Hot apple cider." "Have some." "Will do," Henry said. "Who's handing out candy at your place?" Wade asked. Some of the older kids were liable to throw eggs at houses that didn't hand out candy. It hadn't been that long ago when Henry or him could have been the ones throwing eggs. They had never done it, but a lot of other kids they knew had. "Me," Henry said. "I can get back there before anyone gets to the house." "The older kids won't be along until later," Wade said. "I know," Henry said. He held out a cup of hot cider for Daisy. Daisy rocked Jr. by pushing the stroller back and forth a little. She took the cup of cider from Henry and took a sip. "This is good," Daisy said. Wade said, "It's my mom's recipe." "You'll have to give it to me," Daisy said. Wade pulled a piece of paper out of the top pocket of his overalls. While handing it over to her, he said, Last year I had so many requests for it that I printed up a couple dozen copies. Thanks, Daisy said while slipping it into the diaper bag hanging from the stroller. You're welcome, Wade said. Daisy said, I'd better get next door. I'm sure that Leo is ready to head out trick-or-treating. The kid has a great costume, Captain America, Wade said. How did Jess afford that? Daisy asked. Wade said, I stopped by the Halloween store and picked it up for him. Maxwell was discounting everything by then. That was nice of you, Daisy said. It was just a couple of bucks, Wade said dismissively. Henry shook his head thinking that it was likely to have been more than a couple of bucks. Wade had spent $100 helping Julia get a brake job and a new spare tire. He doubted Julia even knew about it since all she had been charged for were the parts for a long overdue oil change. He hoped that Wade had gotten laid out of the deal, but he doubted it. See you later, Daisy said heading over to Jess's house. She was going to hand out candy while Jess took Leo trick-or-treating. I'll be right here in case you have a problem, Wade called after her. You're always around when someone has a problem, Henry said. If you can help, you help, Wade said, summing up his lifestyle in one sentence. Have you heard from Julia? Henry asked. I got a letter from her. She made it to California. She says that there are a lot of buskers there, but she's added storytelling to her repertoire and manages to collect a pretty good crowd, Wade said. He had been very surprised to get a letter from her. It had been a long letter. She wrote about her trip across the country and the stops she had made along the way. She described some of the people she met. It seemed to him that she had run into quite a few characters. There had been one teenage fellow who tried to build a house out of plastic bottles as a school project. Thinking that he would be clever, he had filled them with water to give them a little weight and strength. Everything was great until the first freeze when all of the bottles burst. An entire wall of the house had come down. He was rebuilding it using sand to fill the bottles. That's nice, Henry said. She's going to do okay, Wade said. I'm sure she will, Henry said. The door next door opened and Captain America came charging out holding an empty pillowcase. He ran directly for Wade shouting, Uncle Wade, I'm Captain America. You sure are, Wade said laughing at Leo's enthusiasm. Mommy kept telling me that I was going to have to go as a ghost because she couldn't afford a costume, but this morning she had this one for me. Isn't that great? Leo said excitedly. The ghost costume would have come from an old sheet with a couple of holes cut in it for eyes. He had nearly died on seeing the simple Captain America costume. That is great, Wade said. Now aren't you supposed to say something when you go door to door? Oh yeah, trick or treat, Leo shouted. I've got some treats over in that plastic pumpkin for you, Wade said. Leo ran over to the plastic pumpkin and looked inside. He could hardly believe his eyes. There were a half-dozen varieties of chocolate bars. Now he was faced with the problem of choosing which kind to take. Turning to Jess, Wade added, I've got some hot apple cider if you're interested. Thanks, Wade. Thanks for everything, Jess said watching Leo pick through the candy in the pumpkin. My pleasure, Wade said. Henry looked down the street and said, the kids are starting to come out. I better get back to the house. Good move, Wade said. Jess said, I'll be over there in a few minutes. Henry returned to the house pushing the stroller. He was going to watch Junior while Daisy handed out candy at Jess's house. Daisy had come down with a bad case of cabin fever and wanted a little time out of the house. Henry was only too happy to spend a little time at home with Junior. For the next hour, young mothers with their even younger children stopped by the house. The kids went ape over the candy while the mothers appreciated the apple cider. A good percentage of the mothers were single, but none eyed Wade with any real interest. Everyone knew Wade. Everyone liked Wade, just not in that way. Next door, Daisy handed out candy listening to the women discuss Wade. The core of their comments were positive. After all, they were talking about Wade who would help anyone when there was a need. Despite that, all of the women couldn't keep from making negative comments about his appearance. There were a few single women who complained about how hard it was to find a nice guy. Daisy was tempted to point out that Wade was a nice guy, but she knew how they would react. It was always the same. He's like a brother and dating him would be icky. Of all of the women in the neighborhood, Daisy knew Wade better than anyone other than Jess. She felt that if anything happened to Henry, that Wade would be the first guy she would turn to for comfort. Her opinion of her own gender was getting lower with every negative comment the women made about Wade's appearance. It was starting to get dark and the older kids started making their appearance. Rather than mothers or fathers escorting their one or two young children, there would be one adult watching a herd of kids. It was always the same. Daisy was handing out candy to a pack of kids when Jess returned with Leo. The pillowcase wasn't exactly billowing with candy, but it was enough to excite Leo. He could hardly wait to get inside to survey his take for the night. Daisy opened the door and let him into the house while warning him not to eat anything until she had a chance to check the candy. The crowd of kids ran to the next house followed by a harried mother. Their departure left Daisy and Jess standing on the porch. Jess glanced in the bowl with candy to see how much was left. She hoped that it would last through the night. If not, she was pretty sure that Wade had extra and would help her out. Jess asked, "How did it go?" Daisy said, "I was listening to all of those single mothers talking about Wade. I kept thinking they were the stupidest bitches in the world." "Why?" Jess asked. "They kept talking about what a nice guy he is, but that it is a shame he's so big. Stupid cows don't realize just how great of a catch Wade is," Daisy said. "He would be a great catch," Jess said, feeling a little self-conscious. "They just can't past his appearance." "The stupid bitches can't put character above appearance," Daisy said. Seeing the sour expression on Jess's face, she quickly added, "I don't mean you. I really miss Jimmy. He spoiled me for all other men," Jess said softly. "He was a hunk," Daisy said. Jimmy looked like a soldier was supposed to look. He had a great physical build, square jaw, and piercing eyes. When he wore his uniform, women swooned. He had command presence. When he walked into the room, everyone knew it. In short, physically he was everything Wade wasn't. "Yes, he was," Jess said with a sigh. Daisy said, "He was a nice guy too. Even men liked him." "I know," Jess said. "He was a lot like Wade in that respect." "Yes, he was," Daisy said. The two women stood there remembering Jimmy. Daisy didn't know how Jess would ever find a man who could live up to the standard Jimmy had set. Jess sighed, thinking that she would spend the rest of her life alone. It wasn't fair. "I guess I better head home," Daisy said. "Henry is probably getting worried about me." "Happy Halloween," Jess said. "Same to you," Daisy said. Daisy walked past Wade on her way to the house, and then went back to visit for a few minutes with him. They exchanged a few words about how few trick-or-treaters there were that year. It seemed to Wade that there were fewer and fewer of them every year. At most, mothers only took their kids around the block. A few of them only visited houses where they knew the owners. Every year it seemed like there was one story on the news where some sick scumsucker put a razor blade in an apple or injected a piece of candy with narcotics. Wade couldn't imagine anyone actually doing that and wondered if it wasn't more of an urban myth than fact. Yet every year, there were all kinds of warnings about checking the children's candy on the news. Of course, with 350 million people in the country, there were bound to be a few nutcases out there. The light started to fade, and the traffic of young kids dropped off significantly. Wade sat on his chair handing out candy to older and older kids. By the time 8 o'clock rolled around, the kids were in their late teens. These were the ones who would play tricks on the houses where treats weren't to be found. Wade handed out candy and found that quite a few of them were more interested in the hot apple cider than the chocolate bars. It was finally past curfew, and Wade started packing up the Halloween decorations. He wasn't going to leave the fog machine out overnight. Although there were a lot of things, it didn't take long to remove everything. He dumped everything in the living room, planning to take it down to the basement in the morning. After taking a short look around the outside to make sure he had picked up everything, he went into the house. He was a little disappointed by the number of kids that had stopped by that night. He had 4 bags of chocolate left. He estimated that maybe 80 kids had come by that evening. He remembered when it was well over 100. He went over to his chair and took a seat. Thinking he would pass the time with a movie, he turned on the television and flipped through the 150 channels. Like usual, he saw nothing interesting. There were a lot of horror films, but he didn't like gruesome movies. He looked over at the Halloween decorations and decided that he might as well carry them down to the basement now. It took a half an hour to box up the decorations and another 15 minutes to store them on the shelves in the basement. It was now 9 at night, and he was bored. He wasn't looking forward to another night at home alone with nothing to do. He tried to read a biography of Robert E. Lee, but just couldn't get into it. It had been nice having Julia around, and he missed the company. Bored, he looked at the literature he had picked up at the Army recruiting office. There was a URL to look up more information about individual jobs in the Army. He wondered if he was willing to make the Army his career. There wasn't much of a future being a security guard at a local mall. He sighed. No one would miss me. Getting on his computer, he went to the Army website and browsed the career categories. The first job that he looked at was as a military policeman. It was too much like his current job, except he would get to carry a gun. Upon finding the job listing for becoming a ranger, he laughed at the idea. There was no way he'd make it as a ranger. After spending nearly an hour reading job descriptions, he was still not convinced he had seen anything that attracted his attention. That was his real problem in life. There wasn't a career he was just dying to pursue. He had just kind of settled into being a security guard and was drifting along earning a modest living. What he really wanted was a wife and family. The job was just a way to pay the bills. Not finding a career didn't affect his thinking about joining the Army. He liked the idea of being with a squad of men and women for most of the time. It would beat sitting around the house every night with no one to talk with and nowhere to go. He guessed there were a lot of reasons to join. Learning a new career, getting some money for college, ending his loneliness, and doing something important. He'd even get paid while doing it. He looked at the pay thinking it was more like they would be pretending to pay him. I'd like to be a medic, Wade said. I'm going to stop by the recruiter's office to learn more tomorrow morning. Hey, Wade. Hey, Victor, Wade replied to the bank guard. Victor was in his late 50s trying to hang on until he could retire. He was a fill-in while the regular guard took his lunch hour. Since Wade always stopped by the bank during the lunch hour, he knew Victor better than the regular guard. I see that it is payday again, Victor said. The pay envelope was sticking out of Wade's top pocket. It wasn't the first he'd seen that day, and it wouldn't be the last. The bank would have a line for most of the day. Wade answered, yes. A little money to feed me and more money to feed the government. Only two things are certain in life, death and taxes, Victor said. And it is taxes until you die, Wade said. Yep, Victor said. The topic of conversation was edging in a direction that was a sore point for Victor. Wade asked, how is your wife? She's not doing so well. The last round of chemotherapy didn't help. The cancer is spreading, Victor said. Oh damn. I'm sorry to hear that, Wade said. I'm going to be taking a leave of absence to take care of her. I was hoping to make it to retirement age, but I don't think I'll make it. Right now, I'd be happy to make it to the new year, Victor said. I'm really sorry to hear that, Wade said. With a little moisture in his eyes, Victor said, Clara and I had hoped to drive around the country a bit after I retired. We wanted to see Niagara Falls, the Grand Canyon, Old Faithful, and the Redwood Forest. It doesn't look like that is going to happen. Wade shook his head. He couldn't imagine how Victor felt to be losing the fight to save his wife. He did understand the kind of loneliness Victor would be facing if she died. If I can do anything to help, let me know, Wade said. Victor asked, I don't think anyone can help. Hey, I can run errands so that you have more time to spend with your wife. I mean, you'll still need to do shopping and stuff, Wade said. That's a real nice offer, Victor said, touched by the offer. I'm serious. You need anything, just give me a call, Wade said. Victor said, I could put in a word for you if you want a job. I'm thinking about joining the army, Wade said. He hadn't come to a firm decision about going into the army yet. There wasn't a rush, and there were a lot of details he had to clear up first. He owned a house, and he would have to make arrangements to either sell it or rent it. In the current real estate market, he doubted that he would be able to sell it. He wasn't encumbered with too many debts so he could clear them up. Even if things went his way, it would be after the first of the year before he could join. The army? Victor asked. Why would you do that? I figured I could do something for the country. Besides, it wouldn't really matter if I got killed. I mean, I wouldn't be leaving a widow behind, Wade said. He thought that sounded a lot better than it would end his lonely nights. He didn't think he could face the idea of living alone for the rest of his life. Living in a barracks or on a military base didn't sound that bad to him. Even slugging around in a foreign country with a bunch of friends sounded better than spending nights alone at home. So you think you're expendable and other men aren't? Victor asked, looking at Wade like he was crazy. Well, I may be, Wade said. The reason he gave suddenly didn't sound all that better than saying it was better than being alone. On reflection, it sounded pretty bad. He decided that he wouldn't mention that aspect of his thinking again. Victor said, Don't do it, Wade. I've got to consider it, Wade said. He was nearly at the point of deciding to go for it. The quiet nights at home since Julia Lane had left were pure torture. He didn't think he could take living alone much longer. Suit yourself, Victor said. Victor wasn't going to badger a man that he shouldn't serve his country. He might disagree with the reasoning behind the move, but he wouldn't argue against it. He had served, and it had been one of the best things to happen to him. He had grown up a lot because of it, and gained a bit of discipline in the process. Wade said, I better get in line or else I won't get lunch today. I'd hate for you to miss a meal, Victor said. Just think twice about joining the army. I'll do that, Wade said. 10 minutes later, Wade was at the food court getting ready to order a taco. He couldn't decide whether to get one or two of them. Sophia came out of the back and studied Wade. She had just heard some rather disturbing news and hoped that it was just a groundless rumor. She said, I heard a rumor that you were joining the army. I'm thinking about joining, Wade said. He wondered how she had heard about it already. After giving it a thought, he realized there had been people who worked in the mall and the bank when he had discussed the matter with Victor. It was kind of scary that he was the subject of discussion like that. Sophia asked, Are you crazy? We're at war. I'm not crazy, Wade said. We don't want you to go, Sophia said flatly. Why? Wade asked. Surprised by the question, Sophia answered, We're going to miss you. Who is going to make us feel safe? They'll find someone nice to take my job, Wade said. Hiring a security guard for a mall wasn't hard. An ad in the newspaper, and they'd have 100 people lined up, particularly in the current economy. It was a good-paying job compared to working in a burger joint. He was sure they could replace him in a day. Sophia said, "You know everyone who manages a store. You help us out when we need a hand. There's no way they'll be able to hire someone like you." "I appreciate the compliment, but I'm no one special," Wade said. "I remember when you helped over at the shoe store when their stock boy was in an accident. How late did you stay there helping them put out stock?" Sophia asked. "Just a couple hours," Wade answered. It was no big deal. What Sophia didn't say was that the stock boy was the manager's son. The manager had run off to the hospital, leaving the store short-staffed. The store had received 40 large boxes of shoes. Wade had helped them unpack and put the stock out on the shelves. Sophia asked, "What will you have today?" "2 tacos and a medium iced tea," Wade answered. "Okay," Sophia said while turning to prepare his order. She shook her head and mumbled, "He's going to get killed." Wade was about to bite into a taco when Mrs. Carson stopped by the table looking irritated. He looked up at her and wondered what he had done to make her mad. "What?" Wade asked somewhat defensively. "I heard you were joining the army," Mrs. Carson said. "I'm thinking about it," Wade said. Wade wondered how many people were talking about him. Life in a mall was strange. People spent a lot of time working there, but it wasn't exactly a tight-knit community. Managers and full-time employees typically spent all of their time in the store. They might talk to the people in the stores immediately adjacent to theirs during quiet times, but they were basically locked to their place of employment. People, like Wade, who knew just about everyone in the mall, were rare. "Why?" Mrs. Carson asked. "I would like to do something for the country. I figured I would get trained to be a medic or something," Wade said. "I don't like the idea of you going to Afghanistan." "It's dangerous there," Mrs. Carson said. "I wouldn't necessarily go to Afghanistan, although that wouldn't be so bad," Wade said. Mrs. Carson said, "You don't know what you were saying. You'd come back a changed man." "Why?" "You can't trust the people there," Mrs. Carson said. "The greatest gift you have is your ability to trust people." "I'll be able to trust the other soldiers," Wade said. "Yes, you will," Mrs. Carson said. She left feeling like Wade was committing suicide. "Still, it would change you." "Maybe that's what I need," Wade said, feeling a little frustrated. "Just think twice about it," Mrs. Carson said. She could see that the discussion was upsetting Wade. She didn't understand why a guy like him would want to join the military. He was a nice guy and had a future. She felt that he would probably be the first guy killed. "I'll do that," Wade said. Mrs. Carson said, "You know that Monique will be crushed if you leave." "Why?" Wade asked. "I think she fancies you," Mrs. Carson said. She knew for a fact how Monique felt about Wade. She just wasn't going to tell him how deep the young woman's feelings ran. She was still too young for him. "You can't be serious." "I am serious. She's a nice kid, but she's a little too young for me," Wade said. Mrs. Carson said, "Just wait until she turns 18. She'll be asking you out on dates." Wade laughed at the idea. "Don't laugh. She's got it bad for you," Mrs. Carson said. She didn't want to be around when Monique heard he was considering joining the army. She had no idea how the young woman would react. Wade had played a very important role in her recovery from the accident that had taken her legs. "I'll have to trust your opinion on that," Wade said. "I've got to get lunch and get back to the store." "That stupid cow I hired is worthless," Mrs. Carson said. She went over to the sandwich place to get something to eat. Wade took a bite of his taco while thinking about his situation. It seemed to him that everyone who talked to him had the same negative reaction to his plans on joining the army. He didn't understand it. The more he thought about the idea of joining, the more he liked it. He knew the physical part of it would be rough, but he was looking forward to the social side. He wanted to be part of something. After finishing his lunch, Wade stood at the end of the North Hall watching the slow Monday mall traffic. It was a slow day at the mall. Most of the traffic was people headed towards or returning from the bank to deposit their paychecks. His radio started squawking. "Wade, can you go over to the bank?" Wade fumbled with his radio, wondering why he would be needed at the bank. The bank had its own security. Unlike him, Victor carried a pistol. "This is Wade. What's up?" "The security guard at the bank has a family emergency. They'd appreciate it if you went down there until the regular guard returns." While walking towards the bank, Wade said, "I'm on my way." "Thanks, Wade." Wade had a pretty good idea what might be the family emergency: Victor's wife. He hoped that it wasn't something serious, although that was unlikely. Victor wouldn't leave the bank unless it was serious. He picked up the pace knowing that Victor would want to get home to her as quickly as possible. The result was that he walked into the bank without looking around. The first clue Wade had that something wasn't right was observing a man hitting Victor with the butt of a pump shotgun. It was a nasty, vicious blow that knocked the elderly man to the floor. When the man started to lower the barrel to aim at Victor on the floor, there was little doubt in Wade's mind that Victor was about to meet his maker. Wade lost it. Bellowing like a bull, he charged at the man with more energy than he had ever showed in his old days on the football team. Wade was a big guy. The man with the shotgun wasn't. When Wade hit the man with the gun, the pair carried forward until stopped by the table used by bank customers to fill out deposit slips. The table was large and fixed to the floor. They hit the table with a sickening crunch, and the shotgun flew against the wall behind the table. With the gunman at his feet, Wade stood there and looked around the room trying to make sense out of what was happening. A second man was standing at the far end of the room holding a shotgun. It seemed to Wade that things suddenly went into slow motion. He watched the shotgun swivel around so that it was facing him. He could see the man's finger squeezing the trigger. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see Victor pulling out his pistol. There was a loud roar of the shotgun going off, followed by a loud bang when a pistol was fired. There were screams. The blast knocked Wade back several feet, but he was left standing for a second. His stomach was on fire. He looked down, discovering his white shirt was turning red. He dropped to his knees. In a strangled voice, he said, "I don't feel so good." Wade fell flat on his face. Jess turned off the CD player after the first story on it ended. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The story had reminded her of the day Wade had been shot. She didn't think she would ever forget that day. It seemed to her that the whole world changed that day. The first she had heard about the shooting had been on the radio while driving home from the diner where she worked as a waitress. The initial story had been about an attempted bank robbery that had been stopped by a mall security guard who was wounded in the process. She hadn't thought much about the news item other than it being another sign of troubled times. The second time she heard the news story, they mentioned the name of the mall. Suddenly, her thoughts had turned to Wade. A sick feeling had settled in her stomach. She nearly lost control of her car when he was mentioned by name. She was pretty sure that they weren't supposed to release the names of victims before the family had been informed. After picking Leo up from school, she had rushed home to see if there was any coverage on the television. Leo had sat beside her, recognizing that his mother was upset about something. For a change, he didn't prattle on about his day at school. Daisy, carrying Junior, rushed over to the house when Jess pulled into the driveway. Tears were running down her face. She was clearly distraught. When Jess had gotten out of the car, Daisy had shouted, "Wade's been shot." "I heard," Jess had said. "He's in critical condition," Daisy had said. "Oh my God," Jess had exclaimed. It was only then when Jess realized she had been crying. At the time, she didn't understand her reaction to the news. The last time she had felt that same sense of loss was when she had learned Jimmy had died. Wade was just a neighbor. Daisy had agreed to watch Leo while Jess went to the hospital. She recalled the chaos at the hospital. The hospital had swelled with personnel to handle the sudden increase in serious injuries. The press was there in full force, trying to get interviews with anyone who would talk to them. The police were there in large numbers. A number of people from the mall were there trying to find out what happened. The attempted robbery had resulted in 4 people being taken to the hospital. One robber had been shot by Victor and was in critical condition. One robber had broken his back when Wade had shoved him into the table. Victor had ended up with a broken cheek, bone from the blow with the butt of the shotgun. Wade had taken a shotgun blast to the stomach. There had been over 20 people waiting to hear news about Wade, with another 2 dozen coming and going. She hadn't recognized anyone except his parents. They had been sitting there in shock, unable to believe their son had been shot. Almost as shocking for them was the number of people who had massed at the hospital. Needless to say, the family members of the bank robbers did not receive a friendly welcome in the waiting area of the emergency room. No one was outright hostile, but there were a lot of dirty looks in their direction. The hospital staff ended up putting them in a separate area. The hours passed without word from the doctors. All anyone knew was that Wade was still in surgery. The tension in the waiting room increased while people speculated if the longer time in surgery was a good sign or not. Mostly it was people trying to convince themselves that Wade would be okay. Jess had found she was seated next to a young woman in a wheelchair. The young woman, Monique, was sobbing uncontrollably. It took some time, but Jess slowly discovered how Wade had helped the young woman by giving her a sense of independence. He had found a very creative means for her to take care of herself. The story brought Jess to the verge of tears. An elderly woman, quite frail-looking, stopped in the waiting room to get news about Wade. She introduced herself as Clara, Victor's wife. She was at the hospital to visit her husband while he was recovering from the blow he had taken during the robbery. They had kept him overnight in case the blow to his head had unforeseen consequences. Later, the investigation determined that one of the men who participated in the attempted robbery had been casing the bank when Victor and Wade had been discussing her cancer. They had decided to call the bank with news that Clara had been taken to the hospital as a means of getting rid of the guard. The fact that he had waited to leave until a replacement had arrived had taken them by surprise. Clara's story about her cancer was the equivalent of dropping a nuclear emotional bomb on the folks waiting to learn about Wade. Jess and Monique had burst into tears upon hearing how Wade had saved Victor, who was taking care of his frail wife while she was fighting cancer. In a way, it made Wade's actions sound even more heroic. He hadn't only saved a man's life, he had provided an ill woman with the precious gift of a loving supporter. The time in the waiting room had turned into story time, with people telling stories of how Wade had helped them or someone important to them. Some stories were about simple acts of kindness. Other stories involved acts that required more effort on his part. It had been early in the evening when the surgeon came out and broke the news that Wade had been taken to intensive care. Wade's parents had gone up to see him. Less than 10 minutes later, they had returned to the waiting room white-faced. Wade had gone into cardiac arrest almost the moment they had gone into his room. It was 30 minutes before his parents had been told they could see him again. Jess had gone home wondering if Wade was going to survive the night. She couldn't believe at the time how upset she felt. Not finding her son at home, she had gone over to Daisy's house to pick up Leo. She visited a few minutes with Daisy and Henry, giving them the lowdown on events at the hospital. The young couple listened horrified at how Wade had gone into cardiac arrest when his parents went into the room. Henry knew Wade's parents and couldn't imagine how they must have felt. Jess had taken Leo home and then put him into bed. She turned on the news hoping to catch some more information about what had happened at the mall. Some of the details she heard at the hospital about what had happened had been contradictory. There was even confusion as to when he had been shot. One person said it was before he had taken care of a robber, and another said it was after he had taken care of both robbers. Apparently, it was a slow news day, and the local news channels had covered the robbery like it had been the president who had been shot. There were dozens of interviews with people who worked in the mall. The stories they told were about a nice guy who helped everyone. Quite a few women were crying while talking to the reporters. Jess had watched the news feeling sick to her stomach. The night had been spent wondering what life without Wade around would be like. She didn't like the future her imagination created. It wasn't the absence of the big things that he did that painted a bleak future, just a lot of little things like bringing over the right Halloween costume for Leo, mowing her lawn, and cleaning snow off the drive and walkway. It was knowing that he would be there if she needed him to watch Leo, or a ride to take her car in to be serviced. The front door opened, startling her out of her trip down memory lane. She turned to look at her husband. She wiped her eyes to hide her tears. "How was your day?" she asked, struggling to get control of her emotions. Same old," he answered, taking note of the wetness around her eyes. She said, "Dinner will be ready soon." "What's the matter, honey?" he asked. "I was just listening to a CD, and it brought back some painful memories," she answered. "What CD?" "A new CD by Julia Lane. It came in the mail today," she answered. Julia Lane had achieved a fame that she had never pursued. The combination of singing and storytelling resonated with people jaded by Hollywood's creativity. It seemed in her stories, the smaller the person, the greater their story. People flocked to hear her tell stories about individuals who were just like themselves, and they took videos. Her reputation had started spreading as a result of the videos posted on the internet. They were relatively long for that medium, since each one showed her singing one of her songs and then telling a story. Then had come the CDs, which she sold between sets. A guy she met in Boston put up a website and started selling her CDs on it. Everything snowballed from there. People started showing up at places where she was planning on singing before she even got there. Soon she was attracting huge crowds that created problems for local law enforcement, who weren't ready to deal with hundreds of people waiting for a singer to show up on a sidewalk somewhere. Rather than playing on the street, she was now playing clubs and concert halls. "How is it?" he asked. She answered, "It's excellent. It's one of the best albums I've ever heard." She's still weaving stories between her songs. "I was just listening to her tell a story. She told a very good one about a big man with a heart a mile wide." "I haven't heard that one," he said. "Is it one of her new ones?" "No, it is one of her old stories," Jess answered. "She's been telling it a long time now." "I wonder why I haven't heard it before," he said. He thought he had heard most of her stories. "I'm not surprised considering who it is about," she said with a smile. "Who is it about?" he asked. He settled on the couch next to her and threw an arm around her shoulders. She snuggled against him, feeling comforted and protected in his embrace. "I'll tell you later." "Was there a letter?" he asked. "Of course." "Can I read it?" he asked. "It was addressed to me," she answered. "She always liked you better than me," he said grumpily. "Rightfully so," Jess said with a smile. "Can I read the letter?" "If you beg nice enough," she answered. Pretty please with whipped cream and a cherry on top, he replied. Grinning, she held out the letter for him. He took it from her and started to read the letter. He laughed upon reading the first line. It basically said that he was allowed to read this one since he would do it anyway. Jess snuggled into his side and thought back to the day after Wade had been shot. She had stopped by the hospital before heading off for her job at the diner. Wade's condition was still listed as critical. People were still stopping by the hospital to see how he was doing. His parents were the only ones allowed in his room, and they were worried. Hoping that he could tell her what happened at the bank, she made her way to Victor's hospital room. A 10-minute chat clarified her understanding of what had happened at the bank. It also led to a number of surprises. The first surprise was that Victor had known all about her. He didn't know her name, only that she was the widow woman whose husband had been killed in the war. Victor had told her how Wade considered her to be a role model of a good woman and mother. She remembered the shock she had felt upon learning Wade was planning on joining the army. She wondered if he was planning on doing it to impress her with the fact that he could be just as good as Jimmy. She had immediately felt guilty, wondering if her continued talk about Jimmy had made him feel inferior. The reason Wade had given Victor for joining the army had confused Jess. She couldn't imagine why he would consider himself expendable. There was no reason for him to think that way. He had so many people who depended upon him like she did. No man with that many friends was expendable. The day had led to additional surprises. Wade's parents had asked her to stop by his house to mail his bills. She had taken the opportunity to wander around his house, doing what women enjoy more than shopping, snooping. She stopped by his chair and looked at the stack of books on the coffee table. Wade was a people person. It had never dawned on her that he spent every evening alone. It had taken her some time to locate the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. Among the bills, she had found an envelope with her name on it. She had stared at it knowing there was money inside. She had found her mysterious benefactor, whose help had saved her from having to take dates. She wondered if he knew to what lengths she had gone to earn a little extra money. It seems like things are going great for Julia, her husband said, breaking her out of her thoughts. Jess said, she's happy. I'm glad, her husband said. Where's Leo and Victor? Leo is babysitting Junior, and he took Victor with him, Jess answered. She had been married for a year and suddenly discovered she was pregnant. Her husband had been overjoyed. Leo was the perfect big brother. What are Henry and Daisy doing? He asked. They're just having an evening out, Jess answered. It had been nice of them to come up with an excuse to get the kids out of the house. She had plans for that evening, plans that wouldn't work too well with youngsters around the house. That means you and I are alone, he said. Jess said, I've got dinner in the oven. Lasagna? He asked after sniffing the air, thinking he recognized the scent. You bet, Jess answered. You're too good for me, he said. Grinning, Jess replied, you won't get any arguments out of me on that. Her husband laughed. I know better than to argue. If we're going to eat, I should probably get off the couch, Jess said. He replied, we can eat later. I'm enjoying sitting here with my arm around you too much. The sooner we eat, the sooner we can celebrate our anniversary, Jess said. They had been married for 7 years. To say that their marriage had taken everyone by surprise wouldn't be an understatement. The day after Clara's funeral, she had proposed to him, and he had accepted, thinking it was a joke. She wasn't joking, and the next thing he knew, he was married. She didn't regret it for a minute. How would you like to celebrate it? He asked as if he didn't know. He had given her a nice silver pendant that morning. She had promised to wear it and nothing else that night. He was looking forward to her keeping her promise. Dinner and dancing. Dinner and dancing? I was thinking we might do a little horizontal tango in the bedroom after a romantic dinner, Jess replied in a sultry voice. She opened her bathrobe, showing that she was wearing nothing except the silver pendant. Rather than hanging around her neck, the pendant was suspended from a thin silver chain that went around her waist. The heart-shaped pendant pointed to the promised land. Her husband rose from the couch. Turning to face her, he held out a hand to help her up. Have I told you lately how much I love you? Taking his hand, Jess rose gracefully from the chair. She cupped his face with her hands. Smiling softly, she said, I love you, Wade. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.